Welcome to All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are so honored today to have the superintendent of Newark Public Schools with us for the first hour, talking about COVID and Newark Public Schools, especially in the age of COVID and what we're going through right now. We're going to be following at 7 o'clock with a really heartfelt tribute to James and Mtume. We're going to have a lot of activists. We're going to have his son. We're going to have other people who are on who will talk about the legacy of James Mtume, who many of you may not know was a mentor to the show for us. He was a mentor to All Politics Are Local. He was on our show multiple times, and we'll get into that at 7. We're going to have law professor on at 8, Linda Carter. She's an activist law professor. And at 8:30, we're going to have DJ Rhino in the state of hip hop. But we're going to jump right into it right now because we have the superintendent of schools, Roger León, and he is here with us talking about, this has been a tough year, and he's going to be talking about COVID and the age of education. We are right now. So welcome so much, Superintendent Roger León. Welcome to All Politics Are Local.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, obviously, and a privilege always to be with you all.
Oh, it's an honor to have you on as well. You are the superintendent of the largest school system in New Jersey, one of the largest school systems in the country. And I know that we had, before break, we had to close again, as in go virtual. And I know that there's been a lot of talk. I know New York City decided to do other things. I know that there's so much that's going on. So what's going on right now? What for that decision to close, and what's going on now and into the future?
So thanks, Jonathan. We've been monitoring the numbers since obviously the start of the pandemic. And we saw something that occurred that was quite different from what we had seen from the start, and definitely when all of the students returned back to school in September. So we saw a rise after Thanksgiving. In analyzing it, we kind of made the assumption that if families were gathering, that would have been a logical reason for those increases, with everyone still trying to adhere to the guidelines and maybe some people doing more than others. And then the whole idea of how people have moved from vaccinations, or at least towards vaccinations and boosters at that point in time. But in the week leading up to winter break, we saw a spike, the numbers we had never seen before. And it wasn't an outbreak. It wasn't numbers and then in that same school. And then it was all across the district, different schools at different times. And I'm talking about from not single digits or even double digits. We were talking about over 100 positives in the district, in both categories of teachers as well as students. And so we had already started activating remote instruction for certain classes, and then leading to the winter break. We were happy that winter break had in fact arrived. We did mandatory testing during the days after Christmas for all of our staff. We had 2 weeks of mandatory testing, all district employees. In a 2-day time period, we tested almost 3,500 staff members.
Wow.
at 5 of our sites that we provided them at the schools. And from those numbers, we know that there are hundreds of staff members that in fact wound up testing positive. We saw different windows. So from Christmas Eve to the 27th, from the 28th to the 30th, from the 31st through the 2nd. Enough to have suggested that on the 30th, it was the best decision to do to kind of give us an incubation period these first 2 weeks of the start of the new year. So in anticipation of being able to make a decision about the following week. And kind of that's where we are. And we're going to be really excited to kind of announce kind of the way the numbers have actually gone. The numbers this week, we would want none of our staff members being positive, and we're just praying that everyone recovers well. The number of actives today are very, very much consistent with what we were seeing before Thanksgiving. Thank goodness for that.
So the rates have actually dropped. The positive rates of COVID have significantly dropped.
Absolutely, in an incredible way, actually, in the district. Imagine on the 28th and 29th during that week, we had hundreds of teachers that were positive. As it relates to the number of positives just today, there are 4 classroom teachers that were with positive results that obviously submitted them to us. There are more than that in terms of being able to teach in person come next week, but that's obviously considerably a whole lot less than the hundreds that we saw about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Now, did you just drop some news? You were talking about. You said something about next week. I'm trying to figure this out. Like,
yeah. So we're extremely excited. We're very grateful for All Politics, our local. One of the most important factors of this organization, your leadership, the leadership of the whole entire team, is to call it like it is. To say, here's what the issue is, and raise it, address it, good, bad, and I appreciate you immensely for doing that. We are extremely excited to, in fact, announce that we will be back to in-person instruction on Tuesday, January 18th, across all of the schools in the city of Newark. Newark Public Schools is, in fact, back in person. We know that there are some people that will need to continue to adhere to guidelines as it relates to isolations and quarantine. So we remind them to continue to do that. And we also remind that what is listed on the district's website, and I know we're dropping into the Facebook Live right now, are our district's protocols and the procedures that we actually have in place in the district. So we ask people to make sure that they are readying themselves during the course of tonight, the next couple of nights, so that they can, in fact, be ready for school on Tuesday. We expect lines to probably be a little bit longer than what we've normally seen and had, simply because everyone is actually getting back to the school. So maybe a little excitement, if you will, but nonetheless, we remind everyone to adhere to those procedures, to be a little patient with us as we work really hard at getting all of the kids back, obviously, in school next week.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, so when you're looking at, so I know that there are a lot of concerns, and I know that we're going to be dealing with those.
And Jonathan, because this is, in fact, breaking news, I'm going to be dropping some important emails. Can I go do that real quick?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, let's see how, I need to work on my weight, but give me a good minute.
All right, great.
All right.
Thank you. All right. So so this is actually breaking news. For the first time he announced here that schools will be open on Tuesday. And that he's opening schools. And we know that there are going to be a lot of concerns with that. And hopefully we'll be able to unpack a lot of those concerns during the course of this broadcast. Zaid, what do you think about like the schools opening up or closing and COVID?
Man, this is just a scary time. You know, this is a scary time to be, a young person, because the thing that that's really driving this, and we'll get into it, of course, when he comes right back, is that this particular variant of COVID, Omicron, right? Or Omicron, however you want to pronounce it. They're all monsters to me. Is the most contagious that we've seen so far. And so much so that it is doing something that the other waves or variations have not done as aggressively, is that they're coming after some of everybody, including necessarily young people and children, right?
Right.
So this is a different ball game all together. I put the webpage for the board in the chat so we can uplift that for our screen. That'll have that just posted the announcement for everybody's benefit. But we had Dr. Chris on a little while ago, right before we left for the new year.
Dr. Chris
Who broke
Purnell,
that down
right?
for us, Dr. Chris Purnell, right? So this thing is still a very clear and present danger. So it is important to say to folks wherever you come out on the issue, vax, non-vax, there's all those things that you need to do to take care of yourself. You need to continue to do and not be, and it's hard for young folks to get it too. And the younger they are, the harder it is for them to get it, because this is an unnatural thing, having something on your face for hours at a time so you don't get sick. So I know this is probably it has definitely been a heavy psychological burden on a lot of young folks, and I know that, and I've seen it in my own family. So we're looking forward to, we're hoping that once they're back on track next week, that we're able to stay on track if folks, do what they need to do. They mask up, do the distancing, keep working on your immune system, whether you're vaccinated or not. If you're under-vaccinated and get caught up in your vaccines, I gotta get my boosters, and I'm trying to wait for the right time to do it, because I get a reaction to it because I've had this stuff, and so it's we got to do what we got to do.
Because you actually had a very serious case of COVID in 2020.
And y'all saw how raggedy I was looking. I'm ugly enough as it is, but y'all saw how raggedy I was looking when I had it. Because we tried to work right through it, but it was a trip.
But you actually
creepy illness. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Zaid, you actually thought that you could actually die. Like, you were very sick for a while. I think you described that you were you had to both make peace and decide to live, right? Like you were you had to make choices while you were sick and be determined.
Absolutely. It was a very creepy space. The thing that beats you up and makes you pathetically weak to where you need nothing but rest. But it have your anxiety so high, you're afraid to actually close your eyes, but you don't know if you're gonna wake the hell back up. It was a really, really creepy experience, and it's something that I don't wish on anybody. So we all have to be really, really, really careful. Okay, Mr. Superintendent is back, right?
Appreciate it. So now everybody knows. So we appreciate being able to showcase it tonight. We appreciate the opportunity.
We just uplifted it on the screen too, so for everybody's benefit as well.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, that's great. And so I know that there are a lot of concerns, right? Like, I know that there are a lot of people, parents are going to be nervous, kids are going to be nervous. What is the first thing you have to say to them? Because I know that before break, I was getting emails from parents about their kids being sick, and during the course of this epidemic, I didn't really have students. I didn't have many students who were getting sick, but I had a lot more students who were getting sick right before break. What can you say to parents who are really concerned or might be scared to get their kids back to school?
Two main, very important points. First one is that the constant change that we have experienced, that the fact that the only thing that's constant is that something else is going to change, is something that's unsettling, that it creates a disruption in the just normal routines of everyone's respective households, and that I understand that completely. The priority for me is making sure that, obviously, health, safety of students and staff first, but I also know that given some realities of some trends, and I know that this is different depending on one's own reality, that this variant is quite different. I think that there are procedures that are also in place that are extremely important, and that we monitor it. That if in fact one of our protocols, as was already shared on Facebook, is that we will close it down. We will close a classroom, an office, a whole entire school building. And I've actually done some of all of that. In June, in July of 2020, we actually had in-person instruction at a school. And on the first day, I closed the school. And I met with the parents a couple of days before to let them know that that could in fact be possible. I was hoping that I didn't jinx it, but it was the reality there. We've closed offices and classrooms. I also want to make sure that everyone understands that during the last couple of weeks, we've intensified our deep cleaning protocol. It's something that is in place, but it's only in place when there's a positive. What we've done is we've actually acted as if every office classroom in the whole entire district had a positive and have begun, and in most instances completed, making sure that each of those respective areas are sanitized. We have cleaning protocols in place daily, and we've been meeting with the custodial workers as well, who've done an absolutely incredible job to make sure that not only during the course of this weekend, but definitely on Tuesday when everyone's back, high visibility and making sure that all of the high contact areas are definitely constantly being cleaned. So I understand the pains that come with this reality. I know them personally. Everyone has their own perspective on things. My dad died an hour before Father's Day to COVID-19. So I understand that. Worrying about my mom, who's 83, is a constant that's in my head. That's my girl. I love her dearly. Can't have anything happen to her. So I'm with any parent that is, having it in a really bad way right now, and knowing that the virus didn't need to exist to make it harder on them. So we have resources available for students and their families. I would recommend, contacting principal, contacting your child's teacher. There's a whole team called the Pandemic Response Team, and we've actually created a whole new mental health team. It's just
actually that's what I was going to ask about in terms of
anxiety. Days though, Jonathan, it's just been created. We started working on it in the last week of December. I called it the January reset. So we're looking at the academic programming, of course, but we're also intensifying the social emotional supports that our students may have always needed, where COVID-19 may have removed the veil from others. We're making sure that kids are good first upon their return. I know that in my meeting with students this week, there was a focus at the start of January with their classroom teachers. We're going to intensify making sure kids are good. And then we're going to make sure that we work on slowly but surely accelerating the movement in the academic program. We know that during remote instruction, 60% of the students did not return to school until this September. 40% of our students returned in April. Those 40% were out of school for a good 13 months. All others for a good 15 months. And we know from student achievement data that the time away from school has, in fact, delayed a lot of important realities. A lot of people say, I skim over that fact. Absolutely not. We've intensified assistance and support. We have so far to go before COVID. The realities of before March 2020 were very, very real. We were obviously constantly sharing data in the public. Didn't look pretty then. It obviously doesn't look pretty now. We do have a number of students that have been working extremely hard, and I'm so proud of them and their families for all of the intentional focus to move us through the realities of today.
I want to push back to the mental health component, because that is, I've seen it as a classroom teacher, full disclosure, Newark public school teacher, and good friend to Superintendent León for many, many years. He's been a workaholic since I've known him, and highly ethical in terms of what he does, very consistent from that time. But let's look at the mental health aspect. I've seen it in my classrooms in terms of kids, feeling not themselves. There are lots of other kids may not show up to school or even online for that. You said that each school is going to have a real mental health component that is now different than what it was before.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
Let's unpack this. What is different now? Like what is being added right now to deal with mental health for Newark Public School students?
Yeah. So since the start of school, there are resources. A lot of them were online simply because of the realities of what students were experiencing, not being in person. There were a number of staff members who actually asked if it was okay for students to come in. This was pre-June 2021, because there were students that were exhibiting behaviors, whether it was online or definitely when they weren't even in class, not even during the school day. Students were having it rough, and staff felt the importance of intervening. We've had staff members, going to houses, and we know that, that interaction is one of concern during the realities of this COVID-19. But our staff were meeting kids and families where they were and trying to address whatever their needs were. The fact that I knew we were at the end of December making this very important decision, all of the realities of what I knew from June 2020's research and the work that occurred by our incredible staff members. Our teachers have done an absolutely incredible job, and our principals have led and shepherded this very, very well. But we knew that going to remote was not going to be something that was going to help our students as it relates to the academic piece. So we knew getting them back as soon as we safely could was the priority. But now that they're back and will be in person next week, we had to strategize and figure out how to do something different. On the academic side, it was quite interesting. We knew that there's a need to move the academic program, so we have to work like we're little fires under us. So we're clear on that. However, we couldn't move so fast like we did in September that we weren't bringing them with us. Students needed some time. You have to understand, every child in our school district experienced loss, whether it was a loss in their family that directly involving COVID, or it was the loss of their friends. They lost their friends. They couldn't see their friends, whether it was in basic conversations or even in a, hi, that's my pen, no, give me my pencil, I want that. All basic important interactions that occur in the human development of the person, that occurs in schools. And that occurs when the children interact with each other. And so we know that that has been sacrificed, and knowing that we were imagining some of that reality again, I met in late December with an entire team of our school counselors, social workers, and our child study team members. On our child study team members, we have psychologists, social workers, and learning consultants. So experienced people that really have an expertise on the clinical side of it. They understand what is occurring in the development of the child better than anyone else. That doesn't mean that others don't. And so they've created my mental health team. Adding to it will be key members of the school. So I did a review with them this week. And so in some instances, they're adding the school nurse. They're adding other members of the school staff to create capacity across the group. So parent liaisons are one group that will be able to get information into the households so that they are aware. Parent liaison is a position that works with the school and with the home. And so having them aware of what are the services that can be afforded children becomes extremely important. Listen.
So really you're saying that for mental health concerns, and I know that this has been a big deal, that every school will have access to mental health professionals, a series of them, that they will be able to access through the parent liaison, the school nurse, the teachers can, there's a network of in every school. There's a network
in every school. And on Tuesday of next week, we're going to ask that team of people to identify who at the school will be the key lead. That will be the person that then meets with me when I have either weekly or meetings and updates to kind of keep me abreast. One of the things that they did this week was share what are parts of their action plan. So not only do we have a team of professionals who are experts in the area, we have other external forces and services that are going to help us as well. But my strategy was to say, we have great people in the school system today. Let me tap them to help us, unlike we've ever done before. It's not like they weren't here, and it wasn't as though somebody doesn't go to them, because we know that students do. But we wanted to create a different strategy to change what is the narrative, right? A lot of people think that, could we provide the very, very best to the very, very best? And that's exactly what we're doing in the last couple of weeks. It's been occurring on the academic side as well, where teachers will be able to provide tutoring opportunities for students when they actually get back. There are tutoring opportunities that were being provided for students before the end of this portion of the school year as well, since the start of September. So we're really reminding everyone of what it is that we can do, and then intensifying those supports. So every school will have a team, and every school as of right now has a team. And then each team will identify a key person that will be in constant communications with me and members of different portions of executive staff team to really move this work. And I want you to know that when COVID is behind us, and it is going to be behind us, we're going to be in a really important way perfecting the needs that our students have, so that when they are struggling in the classroom, we come to the realization that maybe a lot of their struggles have absolutely nothing to do with their aptitude at all, but it has very much to do with issues and problems that they may have that may blind them towards moving other, and is a veil for other people not to be able to see and tap into the genius that comes with every single one of our students. So I envision, as we get further away from COVID-19, that this will be a team that carries the work on.
Cool. So I think that is something of again, the major concern, so that we know that every parent who has a mental health concern for their kid can find help and access to professionals in the school. I think that's a big deal, in that people don't have access to mental health professionals in our community, right? It has been a big deal of people not having access to mental health professionals in our community. From what I'm hearing is that every kid in the Newark public schools will have access to mental health professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's important is that our child study team members are used to only working with a student that has an IEP. We've flipped that script on its head. We have a psychologist in our schools, whether they are stationed there every day or they are on several days during the week. There's a psychologist there. Who better to help us right now? And I have to say that the reality is, and we have budgets, adoption and approvals occurring later in the year, but with the incredible leadership of this board, they have been making and stressing the point of the importance of the social worker and the efforts that they do and make on behalf of our children, and needing more. So we look good with regards to the ones we have, but there's a need that will require us to really reallocate some funds and open up some new positions, and definitely have school counselors and social workers hired to assist us, not only with the present problem, but folks that will be able to stay and grow with us to get us to where we know we're going.
And the thing about the academic, well, Zai, do you have any questions to ask?
He was rolling, and I just want to really just let him roll and unpack everything that he was unpacking. But let me ask this, because and this is the thing that I worry about from the work that I do in the streets of this city that we love, is that COVID is as a mental health challenge is a brand new X factor wild card anxiety trigger, right? And that leads to, unfortunately, some horrible things that we see in the street, a spike in violence that we've all been trying to put an end to and whatnot. And we have a community that has not only been historically underserved around the question of mental health access and mental health service, but we also have to deal with the stigmatization in folks' mind about having to to make those kinds of resources available to yourself personally or to someone you love, right? Where, if you can, have we been seeing, those challenges? Have we been seeing in any particular place in our students, in your staff? And I think we need to be as concerned about your non-teaching staff as much as your teaching staff. Are there any places where we have seen particular expressions of just how this anxiety factor has played out that we need to continue to figure out how to work on?
Yeah, I'll go to an example that was given to me by an 8th grade student in mid-November, before Thanksgiving. This is a student that has straight A's in school, never gotten into any discipline issues, and for all intents and purposes would fall under the radar. We check certain boxes, A's, does the work, doesn't get into any fights, no arguments, all around good kid, and just like all of the other students, a great kid, right? So she says to me that what has occurred to her is a delay in who she is as a person, that she is not an 8th grader. She really feels as though she's still a 6th grader, a 5th grader to a 6th grader, socially and emotionally, that she is afraid, scared, if you will, that she is just not understanding. She has grown in age, that's true, but she says, I am so far behind that I'm just very, very scared. And I say that, and I use that as the example because this child can articulate complete thought. There are opportunities that occur where a student may not be able to explain themselves. They might show that in an argument, in violence, in a fight, in very, very aggressive ways. And we've seen a lot of evidence of all of that. And in ways that are unlike before, in that when we have someone who is in crisis trying to handle a problem of someone who is in crisis, is kind of difficult to really be the best that you can be. So that this has impacted not only children from little ones through high school, but it has impacted all of the adults that interact with them. So that part of what is compounding the problem is that you have a student who's in need and an adult who's helping them who may also be in need. I have a friend of mine who lost her dad on Sunday, and she's in complete turmoil right now. And she's one of our greatest teachers in the district, and lots of love to her and her family, obviously, right now. But how is she going to meet the needs of her students? And it's because she's an incredible professional. So we know that, and I know that, because on Monday she was in class when I actually called to check up on her, but incomplete, if you will. I think that the whole idea that the students are exhibiting behaviors unlike ever before is something that is of great concern. It forced the conversation of what was occurring with these mental health teams to get into classrooms. They're going to be in classrooms. They were in classrooms during the last 2 weeks, although those were all remote. They were going to be sitting in classrooms starting on Tuesday as part of their action plan to really get into classrooms and see the behaviors so that we can actually guide students in a different way. And I am saying violence to every extent possible, and ultimately, resulting in not only discipline, but focusing on how we discipline our students. It's very easy to suspend a student, but we know that our job is to really help motivate children so that they can get to the place where they want to go. All of the children want to be all of the parents of our students want them to be better than them. That's what my mom says is the definition of a parent. You want your child to be better than whatever you are. And so we know that all of the focus points are in the right place. But the reality that this unveiling has occurred really has compounded the problem. It hasn't made it impossible to be solved. It has just made it more difficult because it's layer above layer. And so, to students that are having it rough, I need you back in school on Tuesday. I need you to be ready for us, because we're going to be ready for you. There is no student in our school system that has an issue that we can't help them with. And we're going to work really, really hard. We've been doing it, and we're going to continue to contribute to their greatness by, providing tutoring services, providing counseling services, cheering for them when they're on that basketball court, helping them when they're preparing for a test, and the regular developmental issues. So they're having problems at home, or their home wants to have us help their children better, or there's interaction among students that is confusing. And so we're also going to ask students, as I've done, to tap into that. This is probably the first time in everyone's history right now.
Where you going? Go ahead.
Where our students are suffering something that they would turn to an adult and say, help me out. And the adult's like, I need your help. So we're going to tap into the greatness of our students to help us, because our students are in fact watching everything that we are doing. And it's okay for us to say in a state where we're in this global pandemic together with kids, that kids can actually help not only each other, but they can see sometimes ahead of a problem and can see that things are going to get better. So we would want to have adults be the ones doing that leading, and we do, but we also want to tap into kids to help us out unlike ever before. And they're doing that. On Monday,
let me follow up if I can.
On Tuesday, I met with a student leader from all the high schools, and I almost started to tear up because they let me know that if ever we were in a scenario like this and all of us were the elders, our kids today are going to do an absolutely incredible job for us, because they're seeing it being modeled for them today. However better it can be, and trust me, it could be a whole lot better. We know that the kids are seeing and taking notes of what we're doing.
Let me add another layer to the question, and right on to the answer, of course. Is because and I love that scenario that you gave with that 8th grade student with that 7th grade anxiety, feeling, right? And then I'm really thinking about seniors, right, with a similar kind of feeling, right, getting ready for college, right, with that kind of anxiety. And again, of course, I framed it, of course, with concern about possible violent behavior spiking. What relationship has the board taken with our neighboring colleges that are, coming after some of our seniors as they become freshmen? What relationship have we developed with some of the burgeoning of our resources on the city side, with, for example, our Office of Violence Prevention and some of our wraparound services, like, of course, the Newark Community Street Team that marshal students, in certain hot spots in our community around trying to prevent certain things from happening in the trafficking of our students to and from school, on the streets. Has there been a growth or more of a hands-on relationship with those surrounding institutions, or is that something that's yet to be pondered and examined to help us address those questions?
No, let me tell you, and I love your question, because you just took me around the world through all of those incredible, really important factors that are going to help us get out of the hole. And when I say get out of the hole, I'm not talking about the hole we're in, because this is digging deeper. The whole idea about getting us closer to zero and then being able to develop up. So Board of Education, oh my goodness, the leadership of all 9 of those members have been absolutely incredible. We're looking at policies that are in place, that have existed, that have changed over the years, in particular the discipline policy, to really provide different measures and metrics to really assist students as it relates to that. The fact that we've been trying to perfect this remote instruction has opened doors unlike ever before. I have students from University High School that are taking college level courses at Howard today. So we are maximizing the opportunities for students. It's not like we weren't going this way anyway, but COVID-19 helped us get there faster. So we have dual enrollment with Rutgers Newark, who has spearheaded and led this incredible work. The chancellor there is absolutely incredible. You have
Nancy Cantor. We need to have Nancy. Nancy probably hadn't been on. We need to have her on.
Yeah, Chancellor Cantor, who has just been a model of excellence, definitely for me, and a partner in absolutely incredible work. And we have just really gotten kids to an absolutely incredible place. Dr. Bloom over at NJIT, obviously, the incredible new leadership over at Essex County College is the promise of what we're going to do in the middle schools as well. We have Montclair State University. We have the new president of Kane University, who has spearheaded major programs and initiatives already as his start here. So on the college front, we understand that if our students aren't aware that they cannot be stuck right now, and it's easier said than done, I know, but taking SATs, making sure that they have completed their financial aid applications, our scholarship opportunities over the last couple of years, we have gotten more kids scholarship money in the last 3 years than during a good chunk of any 3 years worth of time in years before. We have increased students receiving their associate's degrees. We have a couple of hundred students that graduated over the last 3 years, not only with a high school diploma, but with an associate's degree. As it relates to people who are getting it done, Office of Violence and Prevention, the entire Newark Street team, lots of love to the respective organizations who are really meeting people where they are and trying to let them know that there's always a better way. And, our work with them has initiated, obviously, a lot with the leadership of our incredible board president, but that's going to blossom as it relates to really interacting with our students. They are in our schools. They are helping students not only from school to home, but really being models of excellence. And I know that it's always really, really hard to say, I can be better than what I am yesterday or what I was yesterday. And these great people are definitely being models of that and demonstrating for our students that they can just be great. You can continue to be great. If you were having a bad day today, you can be greater tomorrow. And so we appreciate them for all of their efforts on the front line. Like these men and women are at the front of it, taking the brunt of it. And I just want them to know, if they're listening, that they will be beneficiaries, and our city will be beneficiaries of their love and their labor.
I do know for that the work that some of the work that the Office of Violence Prevention has already done within the Newark public school system has literally saved the lives of some of our students. I just want to circle back.
Can I say something about that? Because I just have a problem with it. I love you. So
right.
I want our students to understand that they are great, that there is greatness in them, and that whoever they interact with, regardless of the reason, the people who benefit from the interactions of our students are those people. That the Office of Violence and Prevention, the Newark Street team, however wonderful and beautiful those people are, that those people are just better now because they interacted with Newark kids. Mm-hmm. That our students have oftentimes, too often, have been told and worked from a deficit model. You are from Newark. You know, John, when we were on debate tournaments all across this country, people would look at us and be like, you're from Newark, New Jersey. I am from Newark, New Jersey. That does mean something. I want our kids to understand that this world becomes better because children from the city of Newark, in the great, great city of Newark, in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, are the reason why.
Yeah, and absolutely, right. I remember that we would always say that, and there's so much untapped talent, or there's so much talent in Newark that sometimes does not go recognized. But as I said, some of the smartest people that I've ever met were from Newark, and I met them in the Newark public school system. And I've been around a lot of smart people, but some of the most brilliant people I've met inside of Newark classrooms. But to circle back to mental health for adults. One of the things that you said that kind of made me feel kind of, well, like as in actually feel it. My father passed away last year. His birthday is coming up the 16th. And when you're saying that, like teachers, adults, we're all dealing with loss. We're dealing with all of those things that are compounded with COVID. Are there specific things within schools that are acknowledging this with the adults who are there? And I think that was part of Zaid's question. So, what is specifically being done?
Question more, it's a morale question. You know, we wish everybody had ebullience. Everybody had that personality that he has. So we need to identify more. We need to cultivate that.
So one of the things that we've done with staff is really understood, unlike ever before, because it would have been very, very typical for us to say, do this for kids and not say, what are we doing for the adults? And so while our focus are children, of course, we know that those lines that are in between children and all of their futures are important. So all of the adults, we have monthly activities that provide counseling for our staff members, and it's really based on a bunch of different categories. So any staff member who are actually listening through Human Resource Services, there's an actual calendar, and I'm going to make sure on Tuesday that we push it out to everyone. Again, I'm actually writing myself that note right now, so that we can make sure that all staff members are aware of what the calendars are. When are those meetings? They're usually Wednesday in the evening. If anyone is saying, goodness, I wish I was in that session on stress relief and I need it on Tuesday, we're going to try and work around that. It's obviously money that is extremely well spent. So there are some intentional things that we are doing. People would have to opt into it in order to actually get the services. And I want people to know, I shared this the other day as well, that there are some people that may be afraid to be in those sessions and to think that other people, would be looking at a stigma attached to it or think something ill of them. What COVID has taught everybody got it. So the whole idea that everyone may be in need is extremely important. So I've told staff members, if you want to get vaccinated and you're nervous, you want to go get COVID tested and you're nervous, or you want to attend any of those sessions and you're embarrassed or scared, send me an individual message and I'll make sure that I'm there with you. No one's going to laugh at you. No one. The fact that you need us, we need you. Our kids need you. So definitely motivate our staff members to understand that the needs that they may have will be best addressed by having them in sessions with some professionals that could help. I also want you to know that I asked that to the social workers, psychologists, learning consultants, and school counselors. They have given me a list of areas of expertise that they have. These are staff members who are working with children who have expertise with adults. Well, why not? I'm going to hire our own people to work with our adults and provide opportunities as well. I wish I would have read it. I just received the list this morning of all of their answers. So I don't have to give you like examples right now, but I know that people provided recommendations of areas of expertise that they have that we could actually share with our own staff members. And we will, upon my review of it, I'll reach out to those folks. We'll create some type of internal contracts after the school day to really benefit our staff and obviously our students as well.
I know that we're getting ready to go into the last part of this time frame, but I know that in a few weeks we're going to be opening up for enrollment. Open enrollment opens up for Newark Public Schools. There was a recent article that was somewhat critical of different new schools that were opening. They were like, all the new schools that are opening, they present some level of a drain on some of the existing schools, the existing neighborhood, especially the neighborhood high schools. So what do you have to say about the different schools that have been opened? There are a lot of different schools that have opened around the city. There are schools that plan to be opened. How do you deal with the new schools and also the existing schools and some of the struggles they may have?
So thanks for the opportunity to even address the idea behind it. First of all, I have great students in every single one of our schools, and that's a fact. The reality of what our strategy is in the high school is a redesign because we have to always be constantly better than what we've ever been. And right now, given the strategy that is in place, we have done something that is unprecedented over the last 2 years. The largest number of students that have ever enrolled in our high schools in over a decade. We have more students in our high schools today than over 10 years ago.
Wow.
There's more high school students today. In my freshman class, I have 2,900 freshmen. Almost the number is closer to 3,000. And I understand that that scares people, that children would actually think that coming to a Newark school is the best way to accomplish their goals. I understand why people are scared of that. I understand that because they should be. Our students are going to demonstrate incredible excellence. They're required to. They have to because they're from Newark, and nothing less would have been acceptable. So part of our strategy is to take a page out of a playbook. We can't continue to do the same things and think we're going to receive different results. So we have opened up new schools that have reimagined schooling for our students. But I want everyone to know that our magnet high schools all came from comprehensive high schools. Our comprehensive high schools have an incredible history with incredible educators who have provided incredible opportunities to our students. We have the first African-American congressman. We have 2 United States Supreme Court justices. We have mayors not only from great cities like New York, but great cities like the awesome city of Newark. We have superintendents, educators, athletes, professional athletes. We have actually people who haven't and aren't in the limelight, are just good people, and they graduated from our schools. So the strategy at the comprehensive high schools is an actual gift back, as opposed to closing schools, selling properties, things of that nature. That's not this administration. We are opening new schools, making incredible improvements to all of our facilities, and creating a new dynamic for our students so that more students will come to us. And I can understand that that's scary, that we're creating opportunities so that more children choose us. Please know this. No one's going to give you more straighter than the superintendent of schools, because my mother wouldn't have it any other way. So are things needing to get better? Absolutely. Are there individual progress that are occurring across our district? Absolutely so. But ultimately, in the end, if you look at where we are, it is far better than where we ever have been. And please know that this is not the destination where we're staying at. We are moving aggressively ahead. All 6 of our comprehensive high schools, all 6 of our magnet schools. And not only the new schools that are here right now, but the biggest new school that's going to open in a year from now. I'm trying to jinx it because there's shovels that have not gotten into the ground yet. So I'm trying to use All Politics Are Local as a platform to put it out there, to put it out there, to put it out there. So our comprehensive high schools have provided and are providing incredible premier academies. We have spent millions of dollars at each of the schools. I'm not saying that throwing money solves the problem, it never does, but definitely our infrastructure is so old that making changes so that the students benefit now, and we're seeing incredible improvements in every single one of our 6 comprehensive high schools. And I'm proud of the students, their families, all of the staff, and the leadership at those schools for doing so.
Okay. And we have a person who asked a question about teacher shortage, that we still have teacher shortages. I know we're running very short on time, but I just want to address like some of those things to talk about like what is being done about, there's a national teacher shortage that is here.
Absolutely. And so we need help. teachnewark.org is one way of getting your application in. We need people who are certified, obviously, because that would inhibit your abilities to get a job. But I want to make it clear, there is a shortage and we are in need, and that is a fact. But we are not just hiring anybody. If you're good, there's probably another school district for you. I need educators who are great, who understand that regardless of where a student is, they're going to go greater because that teacher is going to create the necessary platforms to help the kid get there. I need teachers who understand that you have to look deep into the eyes of a child and pull out of them sometimes pull out of them sometimes the greatness that is demanded of them in our schools. I need people with high expectations and those who are going to scaffold all the way their instructional lessons so that a child can actually not only be at the peak, but to say that peak isn't high enough. So yes, there is a shortage and there is a need for us to have incredible educators in Newark, but I need those folks that are out there who think that they're just going to apply to understand that they need to come with a little bit more than that.
As we close out on this interview, Zaid, do you have another question to ask or to something that you want to bring out?
I'm sorry, I was muted. No, he's covering the bases, right?
Okay.
We did this, and this hour went fast too, loaded.
Right. I mean, there was
loaded. We unpacked a lot in this hour.
I have one of our frequent guests, and also someone who is on our show a lot, talks about numbers and data. I think she's asking about what do we know about NPS students based on the data that you have. I know that this is like as a compact way as you can. Can you give us a general picture of what's going on?
Yeah, so definitely, to be even very, very specific, you could go onto our district website in the month of August, and definitely again in the month of October. I went into great detail across various categories, not only how our students performed on the Start Strong test in general, by school, by gender, by ethnicity, to show progress. Math was the area where we were devastated as it relates to the results. In comparison to literacy, we did better in literacy than in math, and that was not necessarily a norm for us here. The students that were older, meaning older in grade, were doing a whole lot better than the students that were younger. That made a whole lot of sense to me. The female students in particular wound up not performing as high as we usually have seen results in the past. So that was an area of great concern. Students that have individualized needs and English language learners definitely have demonstrated a need to intensify services, assistance, and support to those students. As it relates to the specific, we had some schools and some students that did really, really well. And we have a lot of schools that are in dire need of intentional interventions. And that's part of what we started in September and what we're intensifying when everyone gets back to school next week. But the actual numbers, percentages, things of that nature, you could definitely find it there. And to the young lady that asked those questions, if there's anything specifically you want, I'll make sure you get it.
All right, thank you so much. I know that we always love having conversations with you, giving us a chance to ask all of these questions. I know we are just about out of time. So the question that I have for you is still Ja Rule?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yo, I love Ja Rule. What do you want? I mean, come on now.
All right. So thank you. We're gonna have to have you back again. Clearly, and we definitely want to have a lot of conversations, probably more specific, and hopefully we're looking at like a lot of the other side of what we're doing after COVID. So thank you so much again, Ed. Say hi, and I know Ed Riley just came on.
I appreciate you, Ed.
What's up, Superintendent?
Oh,
I appreciate you.
Gentlemen, thank you both for the time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being a platform that thinks truth is more important than anything else. And everyone who's watching, Tuesday, January 18th, I need you to school and school on time, but know that there may be lines.
Right on.
Thank you.
Right
Take
on.
care.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. All right. So that was that's a great section of All Politics Are Local, America's #1 political hip hop radio talk show, and we are getting ready to go into the next segment of our show, where we are. It is a dedication to someone who meant a lot and still means a lot to our program. One of our mentors, I would say, even a mentor of the program, and it is the world famous, brilliant artist, activist, James Mtume. We're going to have a series of people on who are going to have a tribute to him. He meant a lot to us. I know Ed is feeling some kind of way, has been for the last few weeks. Ed, do you want to introduce this segment?
Well, I mean, I've had my moments, right? In terms of, trying to, deal with this going in and out. And, it's been hard, because Mtume meant so much to us, just in terms of, all of his wisdom and all of his insight as it relates to, to our community. I think one of the great comforts for me has been, of course, my brother Fatiyn, just in terms of us being able to, communicate and bounce things off of each other. And John, us going up and spending time with them, up at the rehabilitation center, and some of the conversations we had with them, I found myself listening to some of that stuff, when he allowed me to record him. I found myself going back, listening to him, and I had to stop because, it started making me cry, man, because Mtume was such a real brother, just in terms of, just in terms of his wisdom. But I think that, one of the things I was remembering, man, when me and Fatiyn was talking the other day, was when he came to the studio and we did that show with him. And then, he wanted to hang out, and we took him to a hood bar. You remember that?
Yeah.
And he said that's where he wanted to go. You know what I mean? And we sat him at the end of the table.
Black people are. Right.
Yeah. Well, he said something a little deeper and a little stronger than that, but we're gonna hold on.
Fair.
But we took him to that spot, man. And remember, we put him at the end of the bar. And, we asked him, what did he want? He said he wanted a Heineken. We gave him a Heineken. And, and once folks realized who he was, remember, man, everybody started playing his music, right?
Right. And there was a lot to play from on the jukebox, right?
Yeah. And so they didn't just play his music, man. Everybody started singing his songs to him. So, but we're gonna talk a little bit about that. And then we're gonna talk a little bit about some of, the things that were important to him. Obviously, politics was important to our brother, particularly from a Black perspective. And then, he kept saying to me he wanted me to be mindful about what was happening, in the midterm elections, and of course what was going to happen, and and pay attention. But it wasn't so much about what was going to happen in white America, but what was going to happen in Black America. And of course, Fatiyn told me, the other day, he was really trying to hold on for the convention, because there were so many things that he and I talked about, and I've got I told Fadi the other day, I've got all of these notes, and I'm trying to, put them in order and just kind of lay these things out. But let's introduce some of the people, man, who are
Yes, I was
on the
going to
show
say, Ed,
tonight.
I was going to say, Ed, can you introduce Ed and Zaid? Can you introduce our guest?
Well, of course, I can introduce, Monifa doesn't need any introduction. Of course, this is her show. This is the vote. And of course, Monifa, Monifa Bandele is a heavyweight in her own right. So, she doesn't really need any introduction, So Monifa, welcome to the vote.
Good evening, everyone. Peace.
Peace. And then, of course, Brother Fatiyn Muhammad. Everybody knows Brother Fatiyn, WBLS. And in terms of the open line, but he's been riding with our brother Mtume, on the open line for Brother Mtume. Were you, Brother Fatiyn, were you over there with Mtume for the whole 18 years? I think you muted.
There you go. Yes, I was there. A matter of fact, I was there before Mtume came on board.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a serious ride.
Let me just say peace to the panel, and I have to say to Sister Monifa, I remember when I first met this young warriorette. I think there was some campaign dealing surrounding Malcolm X, and I remember I reached out to her as a young activist. She's still a young soldier, but in the spirit of Sister Soldier back then, and she came on open line and she knocked it out the park. And I just continue to see her do this work. I'm not surprised. I expected the kind of work that she does today, and all of you that you all do today. I just want to say that, but I just want to give a special shout out to Sister Monifa because I haven't spoken with her in some years.
Greetings.
Peace.
And Zaid?
And then we're glad to have with us for the first time. And I'm waiting for him to tell his Mtume story, because it's the story that brought us all together at a very important point in the unveiling of some of the history that has been obscured over the years, that needs to be lifted up, that Mtume embodied in a very well way. Professor Scott Brown, who did one of the few books, when there's a need for a whole lot more scholarship on the organization, that brought us Kawaida thought, on the organization that Mtume came out of, fighting for us. It's still a very important read, right? If you want some background on that organization, on this important contribution to that chapter in the movement of the Black Liberation Movement, get that book. And then and this young scholar, and I'm saying he's young because he's younger than me, right? Glad to have him with us and let him tell that story, because it's an important journey, and we want to unpack all that, pull all these things together. Let me say this too, also, before we dive into this, that we also today we said goodbye to a local legend, one of our pioneer voices on the anti-violence front, because on the streets, that's one of the things, that was the thread that held us together, even beyond the political edge that all of us represent, but the stuff that's been playing out on our streets with the violence has been heavy. Tonight this afternoon we said goodbye to Earl, the Street Dr. Best, right, a Newark original. So I just wanted to shout Street out to help frame the discussion.
So
and
I was going to say that
with Mtume as well.
Absolutely.
That's how I met Street Doctor through Brother Mtume. But when Street Doctor came home, Brother Mtume told me about Street Doctor, and I met Street Doctor when he came to an event that Open Line under the banner of Kiss FM was at. And Street Doctor was rolling with two of his warriors at the time, and somebody stopped him at the door, and he said, I was invited by Mtume, and the person held him up, and Street wasn't going to wait for anything, and I intervened, and that was where me and Street, man, and if you listen to Open Line, when Street would call in, one thing he always would say, I love you, brother, I love you. He was not a black man. Him and Mtume were not black men that was scared to say, I love you, my brother. You understand? So I want to make sure I say that.
That's very important. Black men who are not afraid to express themselves emotionally, who are not afraid to be in touch with their feelings. We're not going to heal from all this stuff if we don't get to that, right? And you know what that is? That's the feminine principle working for Black men when we need that to happen. And we need that to happen more.
So, Fatiyn, why don't we start with you, man? Because those 18 years, you know, that you work with Mtume, you know, and you know, we definitely want to mention the great, you know, Bob Slade and Bob Pickett. All of them were a team. For the most part, it was always those three, right, Brother Fatiyn, on the show?
It was first Bob Slade and Brother Mtume. What happens is Kiss FM made some in-house changes at the particular time. Bob Slade and a young lady that by the name of Mtume Dennis, and the producer was Sean Court. And when they made some in-house changes, Mtume Dennis was let go, and Bob Slade was over the public affairs show, Open Line. Me and Bob got a chance to speak. Bob said, I want to put more of a news slant on the program. I wanted to be more hard hitting. And he said that Black men were relegated to talk about sports, but not politics, not important issues that affected our community. And he wanted to make sure that there was a voice. And what happens is on a yearly basis, he used to do what is called a year in review. And he would bring Brother Mtume on and Nelson George and hold a panel to talk about the year in review. And he felt that Mtume was a strong figure and a strong voice, and a voice that needed to be heard. So he tapped Mtume to be a part of that team. So it's Bob Slade and Mtume. When Mtume joined, he was also in the beginning stages of New York Undercover. And by him doing New York Undercover, also the OJ situation / trial was going on. So Bob Slade said, we need a legal person just to, you know, for commentary. And Mtume said, well, I know someone, and that's Judge Bob Pickett. So Bob Pickett would come on to give commentary weekly on the OJ trial. And when the OJ trial was over, Mtume said, you know, this triangular is working. It's something different, something that we don't see out there. And I think it's something that we should push forward. And Bob Slade agreed. And that's how the triangular thing came together for the late Bob Slade, the third answer, Mtume, and Judge Bob Pickett. And then myself as the producer.
And y'all were much younger back then, too.
Oh, brother, tell me about it, man. Tell me about it. I'm glad my hair's still black, boy. I'm telling
you. And Monifa, did you know Brother Mtume?
I didn't personally, but you know, I definitely was impacted by his work. Both my fathers, Adeyemi Bandele, Oyemola Akinwole, talk about him performing at the East, you know, when I was a kid, and that just the impact he made. And I recently saw an article where the headline said, "From Miles Davis to Biggie Smalls." And so it also talked about how he connected multiple generations of activists and artists, you know, and he also was like a real archetype for the artist activists that we are always, you know, revering. And, you know, we were just recently talking about Sidney Poitier and all of these folks who, in addition to being creatives, were activists in the community. And I think that Mtume, when you really put together all of his story and all of his life, activism was very central. And so that benefited all of us. And of course, I was just, the last time I saw him, we were on a planning meeting together for the next Black National Political Convention. And so he was active 50 years ago when the first one happened in Gary, Indiana, and was a part of the leadership for the one that's going to happen this year in Newark, New Jersey. So he is an intergenerational activist and artist.
Wow. Absolutely. So I remember when Ed and I were talking to him not long ago, he said that Mary Baraka actually was the reason why he came to Newark, right? And I didn't know that, right? Like 67. In terms of him leaving, but
67 in the politics of Amiri Baraka, right? Baraka's political impact on their organization.
And I think that's why that's a lead into Dr. Scott Brown.
Sure.
So talk to us about like what is it that helped some of the origin of Mtume as activist?
Well, it's really hard for me to even sum a lot of these things up. I met Mtume in '97. In fact, I remember Brother Fatiyn, who was I was on open line when the book Fighting for Us came out, but I met him before then in '97. After I just was writing a dissertation on the group that he was in, and I just called New York Undercover, and he called me right back. And he's been a mentor, a good friend and mentor to me for 25 years. So, if I had to put some shades on while we're talking, y'all, please forgive me. So let me just say that outreach to other generations was part of why he was so powerful in terms of reaching out to me. And his issue with the US organization, of course, all these political organizations in the 60s had to deal with COINTELPRO, and they had internal contradictions and problems, and the pressure, though, of the weight of the state in terms of breaking those groups up and really thwarting the thrust of the movement. And that created its own kind of diaspora, if you will, some people moving about for different kinds of reasons. So there were a group of people in the group US that was started in 1965. By 1968, 69, really 69 into 70, there are a whole group of people that just scatter because the situation is ripe with sectarianism and all kinds of issues that are not really the core of what we want to talk about. But what
Mtume was very blunt about that too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very blunt. And I think plain spokenness, that idea that Malcolm has of make it plain, is that's the embodiment of Toombs. That's who he is all the time. He's always making it plain, and that's what made him such a genuine person. But I want to say that when he comes to Los Angeles, people forget he comes in '66 on a swimming scholarship. He's coming and he goes to Pasadena City College because the coach of the swim team, swim team coach, was going to be the Olympic coach for '68. And the movement attracted him. Now he's already, raised by jazz musicians. So he's already a very gifted person, and a person who's been mentored in ways that most have not, even when he comes out here. So in that context, being so real and non-elitist with that kind of background, that kind of cultural background, is special as well. So he joins the US organization and gets involved in the philosophy of Kawaida. That organization is the organization that established the holiday Kwanzaa, chaired by Maulana Karenga. But the idea spread, and so there was a network of people on the East Coast and other parts of the country that had embraced a lot of those ideas, even after a lot of the weight of COINTELPRO had been struck. And so there was a magnet, and the Congress of African People hosted a 1970 conference in Atlanta. And you had, of course, all the political conventions later on in the 70s that this current one is a continuation of. And so that magnet of other advocates that had an idea about Black empowerment drew him. But also, he moved back into resolving a contradiction. He was in a cultural nationalist organization that didn't have adequate room for the arts from his perspective. And so when people start with Miles, they're starting with a period in which he finds someone that he can connect with that has a political voice, but also ample room for him to grow and learn and study artistically and also economically, in terms of just the understanding that Black art is a resource. It generates wealth for others. So a lot of what you see Mtume do in the 1970s is grounded in a lot of the core principles, activist principles, and empowerment principles that are in the story earlier on.
Wow.
I can keep going, man. I said, let me pause here, because that.
Yeah, I'm probably the only jazz head on this show. So I wanted to lift up the Heath background. Mtume is
That's right.
He's the son of the great Jimmy Heath. Jimmy Heath, Albert Tootie Heath, and Percy Heath one of the first families of jazz, a great jazz family that came out of Philadelphia. And so this son of that great tradition will become a part of two traditions as he becomes a man. He becomes a part of the Black liberation movement, right, politically, and he becomes a part of the Black arts movement as a functional artist with politics, right? And that's what we see coming together, that Scott was just trying to bring together during that. And he would stay true to that those anchors within himself over the projection of his life to where, you know, all of y'all came in contact with him later on in the late 80s and the early 90s, right? And being true to that, as a whole lot may not have been as consistently true, is one of the reasons why we love him so much. He gave us so much coming from that vortex.
Could I say something real quick here? And Dr. You know, I don't know, you know, again, how much Mtume revealed to Dr. Brown. So what I'm going to do, or how much out here, a lot of times we talk about Malcolm X. And when we talk about Malcolm X, we look at Malcolm as being a revolutionary. We look at him being militant. And there's a part of Mtume that was militant. Matter of fact, you don't even hear that. And if you know his history with the US organization, I'm not going to go too deep into this because I don't want to get lost here. But there's a militarism with those organizations back then. You got to realize that there was a shootout that took place at UCLA between the US and the Panthers. And there's a militant side. There is money involved. There's a lot of things that our brothers and sisters were fighting against this systemic racism society here in America. And they don't talk about that militant side. This is just not about right on. And Mtume goes from just being an activist, then just right into music. Now his life was on the line.
Right.
His life was on the line. He faced the barrel of a gun down,
That's
you know,
right.
his
right.
you know, as much as I'm going to go into that. And I remember when we invited Dhoruba bin from the night,
Wow.
from Wahad, thank you, from the New York Black Panthers. And the first time he came on the program, he wouldn't sit with Mtume. He wouldn't sit with Mtume. And there was a brother named Eitan Edwards who was tight with brother Dhoruba. And we had to have a couple of meetings, and then we wind up going out for breakfast because Dhoruba was under the impression, you know, what had happened at UCLA, Mtume being on that side. That was real, fellas. When we finally got them two on the radio, y'all don't know what took place for us to even sit down on the radio and have that discussion.
And is what you're talking about the rift between the Black Panthers and the United Slaves organization that was fomented by
the United Slaves?
Not United Slaves, brother. Right. This is. Can I get in here? And that's a function. Please. I appreciate that. That's a function of the reason why they were fighting in the first place. Right. That is the way that the FBI would draw cartoons and come up. That's a slur. United Slaves that was pushed, and it's interesting. Even in the 90s. 30 years later, when I'm writing a dissertation, most people who otherwise would think are really smart and go to sources, calling them United Slaves. But also, I had a very radical idea. Not very radical. If you're going to write about people, interview them.
That's right. Talk to them. That's right.
So it amazed me that people had so many strong opinions about so-called rival factions, but never had dialogue. And so it was a real privilege for me to be someone that got Mtume talking about something that he had not talked about in 20 years. And so when it comes to the disruption...
Tell the story, Scott.
All right, so I'm studying the US organization, and I could not understand why there wasn't in its current form. And the other thing is the US organization is not continuous. It's shut down, broke down like all the other groups by the 1970s. So by the time that, you know, leaders come out of jail and rebuild, there's a conversation about us as if it's continuous. It really isn't. It gets reestablished and reinvented in a different form in the 1980s and 90s under Dr. Karenga. But the point is that I call up Toombs at New York Undercover. I didn't expect much. I'm just at that stage. I'm a graduate student. I'm throwing everything at the wall, right? 15 minutes later, I get a call back because I had some footage of him from 1968 playing congas with the Us Organization's dance troupe on the Rosie Greer show. I had the videotape of it. And so he called. That's what I said on the message. He calls back, "You got some footage of me, brother?" Yes, sir. And so we start talking. He says, "Now, what are you doing?" So I told him what I was doing. He gave me his address and all of his information. I went down there for what I thought would be a couple of hours of an interview and ended up staying a couple of days. Now, I did not know about all of the drama in the organization. And I remember I came to the conclusion that, you know what? I ain't sign up for all this. I ain't sign up for the underground stuff that the brother was referring to. I didn't sign up for shootouts. I didn't sign up for all of that. I'm just trying to write a book to, I'm thinking, lift up in Nguzo Saba, et cetera, et cetera. And so he said to me, "Well, brother, if you feel that way, then you didn't have a mission in the first place." I said, "Well, hold up. I wasn't the one in the organization saying all praise is due, and except that was you." And rather than argue with me, what was really incredible, and this is an important, I think, lesson, he said, "You're absolutely right, brother. It is on us." And we made a pact. I would finish the book, and he would reach out to the other advocates. He did that year, and I finished the dissertation, which became the book. And we were very good friends and comrades, and he was always, of course, a teacher to me since then. But I had to, when it comes to navigating the waters of the cult of the personality, one part of the reason why Mtume and Mtumeism, if I may, has a kind of skepticism about loyalty to a person above principle, it's because of the journeys that he had in the movement, and even some of the things that he was seeing with the industry as well. So with that in mind, I continued to work with him. In fact, just a week or so before he transitioned, we were talking about this interview that I'm working on that's going to talk about some really incredible things he was doing with veteran artists that had been really abandoned in the 1990s. But to get back to your point, yes, the political rifts are there. The skepticism are still there among, like you were saying, with the brother from the Panthers, the brother from deals with Mtume, thinks of him that way. But that's part of the lingering impact of COINTELPRO.
That's right.
People talk about slavery. What do you call that? Slavery psychological syndrome.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
We ain't got to go back that far. Present COINTELPRO syndrome.
That's right.
That's, if you want to look at the conditions that we have now, you don't have to go back that far, because we were on a certain kind of path. And by 68, 69, that was redirected. Some people had the ability still to transcend that and still bring a lot of the spirit of that to us in spite of the repression. And Mtume is one of them.
And just briefly, can you break down what COINTELPRO was, if people don't know, if our audience doesn't know what it is, and how that, and you talked about how that affected Mtume, but can you be more blunt about it? Like COINTELPRO, the US Organization, the Panthers, the Daruba, that interaction. How does that mix? How does COINTELPRO affect that?
COINTELPRO is a divide and conquer program of dirty tricks. So it foments discord, people sending letters, somebody's going to attack you, faking letterheads, faking the voice of other people, sending anonymous phone calls. It's what was happening to countries that were being overthrown. If you look at the disinformation campaign and what happened in the 50s in Guatemala and later on parts of Central America, places where the CIA operated, where we had domestic forces through the FBI, the same bureau chief that led the assault on 60s organization got its start taking down the UNIA, that being J. Edgar Hoover. So there was a long history of breaking up, splitting up, and dividing Black organizations, okay? Dropping anonymous news articles suggesting this. And so what happens is, now you asked me, how did that manifest itself? So we talk about there's two things happening. There's the inter-group rivalries that you talked about at UCLA. There's also the intra-group rivalries. So the rivalries within the Panther Party, right, are probably even more severe than the rivalries between organizations, right? And so there's that dual assault of creating havoc between groups and within them. Some people have contradictions that they bring to the table, but they are exacerbated by the force of guns and rumors and mischief making. The problem with us is we tend to think that our own ideological position is what matters most. But if you go to the FBI file, the US organization, the Panthers, the Nation of Islam, the SCLC are all called Black nationalist hate groups. Right. So while we tend to think about our subjectivity, there's a common thread in that Black activism is a threat. So I saw from all of these discussions and in Mtume's story, even more clarity about the kinds of things we're going to need moving forward. In terms of communication, in terms of understanding that in spite of our differences, those differences mean most to us. We like to think that, oh, we're radicals. We had a class position. They had a reform position and this and that. All of us were put into Black nationalist hate groups. The objective and the most fearful thing, which is stated in COINTELPRO, is the unity of organizations.
And the reason why I brought this up, and Dr. Scott Brown, you did an excellent job of explaining this, is that when you're having a discussion about Mtume, this is one aspect that is not discussed. And I think it's a very important aspect of understanding who the man is, Brother Mtume, and not that he developed that then, because he is on one of the documentaries that aired out there, that he was taken to a Nation of Islam rally where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was speaking, and the lead-in speaker was the late Malcolm X. But this is so important because a lot of people don't know the context of this. And I mentioned Brother Daruba, but I remember when we had Sister Asada Shakur on Open Line again. That's another one, incredible. Incredibly, brother, you don't know what it would take to get her on the program, because she was moving around in Cuba. So, and they still she's still a wanted fugitive. $2 million exactly. And to hear her story of what she went through and our other brothers and sisters of the Black Liberation Army, and to have somebody that was there and understands that, not only understands that, but participated in that, that brings a dynamic to say, this is real, this is tangible, But I like what Sister Monifa and what everybody has said on here, is that what Brother Mtume has done is he has moved through different genres and generations and showed excellence at any and everything he touched and understood it. But he also said something that I heard. He said, I don't look back. He said, once I cross a bridge, I burn that bridge down. I keep moving forward. Because he said, if you look back, you wind up getting stuck. It's about moving forward. So I just so glad that we got a chance to talk about this. I'm gonna let the moderators go ahead and moderate this program. But I just wanted to bring that up.
I wanted to say that what this points out is how important Baba Mtume is, because while he is intergenerational, that helps keep us strong and current and relevant. We don't have to repeat the mistakes of the past, because while he may not be looking back, he continues to share the lessons, from looking back. And the forces that we're against are intergenerational. We talked about COINTELPRO, and Brother Dr. Scott said that this is a program that goes back to Garvey's organization all the way up to, as far as we know, right now. That's right. Black Lives, right? And so you have another tactic they had was to infiltrate these organizations. In New York, it was exposed that the same Malcolm X bodyguard, Eugene Roberts, that infiltrated his ranks, then infiltrated the Black Panther Party, who those were the young people who were inspired by Malcolm, right, to help set up the New York 21. So the forces against us are intergenerational. And so without soldiers like Baba Mtume, we're stunted, right? But he's building these bridges so that we can be stronger and we can win.
To add to your point, Monifa, I got to get this in too, because today also happens to be Sundiata's 85th birthday. We can't mention the side without Sundiata. We got a lot that we need to do for Sundiata right here in Jersey. But Mtume did this too, and this is a practical expression of what you just laid out. I brought Mtume in just as I would bring some of the elder Panthers in to do political education with my troops in the new Black Panther Party. I also brought him in to do political education training with the troops too, so they could see, all of that unfold and how it's important for us who is trying to move forward with the work, move forward not just with the history and the consciousness, but with the principle and the discipline, right, to protect ourselves from some of the things that they didn't quite, didn't realize what was happening until a lot of stuff had already happened, and we're still reeling from the casualties that came out of that. The Mtume helped us walk through that.
Absolutely,
that was important to appreciate.
That's a very important point that he helped us walk through it. He gave clarity to it. He also, for me, there's a couple of things that are really important too. One is that he was I have one point. I'm putting down my points on what is Mtumeism. One, I don't know how to phrase this, but as he was skeptical of the cult of the personality, he was also very skeptical of making celebrity in its own right something to pursue. He was very comfortable with connecting with people and not necessarily being, and we actually had to work very hard, those of us who were close with him, to get him to do a lot of the interview. We're blessed that he did those things because now we have something to post. To share, but he was reluctant. He did not get any ego gratification out of notoriety. In a period of time in which that ends up being part of one of our challenges, and that is to seek certification by notoriety rather than substance. So he was somebody that was very skeptical about that, and he was concerned that so many people who are involved in organizing are not actually organizers. What they're seeking is notoriety. And sometimes the two can work together. In many cases, they don't. But that's another point that I think is a subtlety there, because he was comfortable saying to me, hey, brother, we met and we did X, Y, and Z. And it wasn't about whether or not the media knew it, whether or not it was advertised. And the hip hop generation, who probably understand propaganda and self-promotion and the importance of that more than any other generation, had to really connect with him, even for him to do the little that he did as far as letting people know what his legacy was.
Now, I want to move into another area. And Fatiyn, I think you can speak to this, because one of the things that Mtume, we were working with him on, putting together something for the Facebook page, for the website for Unity Without Uniformity, Inc., for the 50th anniversary of the National Black Political Convention. And one of the things he kept pointing out is that he wanted us to not forget some of the trips he had taken. And you remember, John, he kept telling us to get it right. And I believe, Fatiyn, you had gone on a couple of those international trips with him.
I went on one trip with Brother Mtume. That was a very dangerous one when we went into Khartoum, Sudan.
Right.
And at that particular time, the president of Sudan was President Bashir. And you remember there was a world bounty on Brother Bashir, President Bashir, and they were fighting in Darfur. And what happened is that facilitated by the Nation of Islam, Minister Akbar Muhammad, went on the trip, and Brother Mtume facilitated the media. It was a Black media delegation, because the mainstream media here told their side of the story. And once the Nation of Islam and Brother Mtume felt that there needs to be told the other side of the story. So we went in there, and we not only met with President Bashir, we met with different leaders, different tribal leaders that were fighting. It was times when we were in Darfur, you had UN troops here, you had Darfur troops here, you had other troops there, and they are facing one another, and we're right in the middle of this. And you talked about, these trips, and Mtume took a lot of trips to Ghana and numerous places. But this international trip was about bringing the truth, bringing our story to the people. And that was something that I was so glad that we were able to do. Matter of fact, we was able to do our first radio broadcast from Africa back into the States on the radio. But what it was about was to make sure that our folks, our brothers on the motherland, got a chance to tell their story and not get it twisted by mainstream media.
And when you talk about danger, was because one of the things Akbar said to me the other day, he and I were talking, I think on Wednesday, and he was talking about, we're going to make an announcement, but he was talking about the list of ambassadors that Mtume had relationships. How was he welcomed in Africa on that trip?
Well, on this particular trip, like I said, this was a dangerous trip, because you got these different factions that are fighting and warring at the time. So when people were first of all, when we got to the hotel, they took our passports. We were not able to travel to and fro from the hotel. We just could not do that because we never knew. And I remember one time we was on the bus, and one of the security guys stopped at a checkpoint and got more weaponry to put on the bus to make sure that they will be able to protect us. We did not have any incidents, not at all. Everyone perceived us, even the warring factions that didn't get along with one another, they treated us well. How Mtume was received over there was received, and Minister Akbar was received in a respectful way. There's other trips I have not been on, but I know that in Ghana, Brother Mtume knew the former president, the late president, President Rawlings. I believe Mtume was appointed to be a king, I believe, in Ghana. And he was well received in different African nations as a arm here in America back to the motherland, a brother that was not only well respected, but walked in the footsteps of liberation for African people anywhere on the globe.
And that's what Pan-Africanism looks like. You know, that's what we're talking about.
Right, and I know that he very much valued the international perspective. He was like, wait, I went throughout the world spreading like a message, right? Like that it wasn't just domestic. He really wanted to. He really like appreciated the international aspect to his activism.
And not only did you and Brother Jonathan, you just summed that up very well. He did it through his activism, but he also did it through, especially with Miles Davis, because they traveled the world and they touched the world through their jazz, through the music, through the arts. So not only did he connect as an activist, he connected as a musician, but he also connected as a real and true Black man.
Now, Fatiyn, I want to ask you one other thing that he had told us, Jonathan, and you remember when he was sharing this story, we were cutting him off in a conversation, but he wanted us to understand Black radio. Were you aware, or were you even part of that, Brother Fatiyn, or do you know anything about it? when a group of black folks got together that was led by Don King when they were trying to buy a host of radio stations. Did you were you familiar with that?
Yes, my brother. I was familiar with it. So what happens is that there was I think it's during the Bill Clinton era, during Bill Clinton when he was the president here in the United States, where there was some regulations put on the FCC, and due to the disparity of black owned radio, that they opened up the field for black folks to purchase radio. That's how, and I work for also Radio One with Reverend Sharpton, and that's how Kathy Hughes and her son Alfred Liggins was able to buy numerous radio stations under the banner of Radio One. So yes, so what happens is Don King, Mtume, and a group of black investors came together, and they not only went to bid for a radio station, they outbid the competition, but lost out to someone else. And at the end of the day, it was looked upon as who was trying to buy this station and what they was going to do. You talking about Don King, Brother Mtume, and other folks that wanted to make sure that we were able to tell our story and what to do, to do with those kind of radio stations, to cultivate and continue that legacy of what black radio used to do, and a little bit that is still out here that continue to do. They were shot down. So I was very familiar with that.
And so they weren't necessarily interested in black talk radio. Mtume was saying that they were not. If it was going to be music, if it was going to be that, they weren't. Even though they outbidded everyone, that because they were talking about black talk radio, that was something that these folks weren't interested in giving licenses for.
Right. Exactly. They was not, because that's the drum beat. That's the drum beat that goes around, that talks to us, that summons us, that motivates us and brings us together as a collective. Even if we have different opinions, it brings us together as a collective. And those are the things that they help destroy. And if you notice, as that time has moved forward to where we at today, we see the destruction of black talk across the United States. You do not have as many talk black platforms on commercial radio today.
That's right.
That's important. That's important to lift up. Important to lift up. And from a hip hop perspective, that dovetails with the attack from the industry on the degeneration of the culture, right? And all that stuff came together. That's important to lift up.
Now, one other thing is that, and this is important for Monifa. Whenever we got together with Mtume, if there was a sister in the room, and he told us he did this on open line, he would always try to make sure that the sisters in the room got just as much time as anyone else in the room, right? Just in terms of that. And the other thing is that he was big on pushing young people, right? He was real big on making sure that the next generation got an opportunity to be in the game, right? Because even with us, he would always, because I can remember some of the dialogues that he got into with Jonathan on the air, and he would say, no, man, I'm an old man, but hold your own, but he was always big on pushing young people. But more importantly, he was interested in making sure that our sisters got just as much time on the field as the brothers, particularly if you were on the air with him. He would always say, no, let's hear from the sister. So let's hear from Monifa right now.
Well, I was thinking about that point of wanting to block us from having a voice, wanting it to be talk radio, not wanting it to be talk radio, wanting it to be mostly music. Also, what you had happening in the 80s and 90s, if you look at documentaries like Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes, there was also a blocking of women in the culture, whether it was in radio, as artists, as journalists. I mean, we see what happened with Dee Barnes. So there's a silencing, one, of like half our community happening, and also a silencing of our political voice, right? So it's just kind of like, just shut up and sing or shut up and dance. It is the direction that the corporate entities want our culture to go in. And so therefore the platforms were pushing that. He was someone who was constantly pushing back against that. And yes, coming into the forum, opening it up and making sure, like you said, that women are speaking, that the voices of everyone is brought to the fore, the voices of young people, and that our culture does not exist separate from our politics. That's an ongoing fight. Someone in the chat, I saw it come and said it's the drum beat, right? One of the first things that we're taking from us, our drum, it's this stripping, it's making benign our culture, which it inherently is not. Our culture is about an articulation of our liberation. And every time we try to go there, which is also in this documentary, Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes, artists are told by their A&Rs or by the executives in these record labels, we don't want that. That's not the direction we want you to go in. And that's because of how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to add what Sister Monifa, just to build off of that. As I stated, Open Line was created because you had other Black mediums out there. You had Bob Law doing Night Talk on WWRL. You had Mark Riley. You had Imhotep Gary Bird on WLIB. You had Bernard White on WBAI, and and a host of others out there doing the talk. So what Open Line,
you even had Gil Noble and all of them.
Gil Noble on Channel 7. We can sit here and list them all out there because there's so many out there. I just want to give a few recognition there. But at the end of the day, what Open Line was a little different, slightly a little different. And what I wanted to do as the producers to make sure that we were still connected to the ground, but we broadened it. We talked about music. We talked about other things in other areas. And something that I talked about, Imhotep Gary Bird, we would invite a Sean Hannity on. We just didn't criticize him. Mtume was like, if you're going to get in the kitchen, you get in the kitchen all the way. You understand? If we're going to talk about them, bring them on. When we brought on the Aryan Nation, there was only one stipulation when they came on. You could not say the N-word. You could not do that. You could not disrespect our community by saying that word. And we had that conversation. But on the same time, we brought on the late brother Minister Khalid Muhammad to talk about Jasper, Texas, where the late James Byrd was dragged. And he went down there with the new Black Panther Party with guns loaded.
Step to the Klan.
Step.
That's right.
But at the same time, as you had those Black male voices, and what Bob Slade was saying he wanted to create, Mtume did not want to fall into a hole. He did not want to see what happened back in the 60s or before, where our women were pushed behind. And he wanted to make sure that not only as we as men spoke, we had to speak as a collective with our sisters out there. So that's why Mtume always talked about, we need a sister on this program. We need to hear more from the women. And why did he want to hear from the young? We did a show where he had his granddaughter on, and we invited young folks on. And when I said I invited Sister Monifa on, Monifa was a young spirited sister at that particular time. And the reason why is because how can you have conversation and dialogue not talking with them? You can't talk at the young people. You got to talk with them. That's the only way that you have the sharing of knowledge and understanding. And that's one, I just want to give you one aspect of why Mtume pushed of making sure that our sisters' voices and the young voices was also heard.
It's also,
because that's how we win. This show is called The Vote. It was a big vote on voting rights yesterday, right? And what we see happening in 2020, the leadership that Black women have taken on the ground and in voting rights, and the huge turnout of young people, right? In 2020, young people turned out in some states in excess of 50%, which is unprecedented. In New Jersey, it was 67% of young people in the state voted in 2020 compared to 2016, or it was way below 50%. And so Mtume was wise in engaging young people. And in these past 5-6 years, has been deep engagement with young organizations and young activists. Because like you said, talking at people, you're not going to get the results of youth leadership, right? You have to be in conversation. And so he was just wise in so many ways. One, because his heart knew that you needed to engage women and young people, but also he knows it's a winning strategy, right?
I actually, Monifa, I wanted you to talk a little bit about unity without uniformity, like the convention. I know that you were working on that. Like that is something that Mtume was working on with Ed and you. And what is there about that conference that is also part of that legacy?
Yeah, we're at another very critical moment in our history, just like we were 50 years ago. I talked about the turnout in 2020, just the unprecedented things that we were able to do. And now we're being hit always, but especially now with the blowback, right? 49 states introduced last year in 2021 some type of voting restriction law, right? And so, and 19 of them passed. So we're really in a fight for the future, and we have to come together, just like what was done with our parents and our grandparents 50 years ago, to have a convention of our Black political leaders and our activists to say, one, what are our strategies to build power in our community? And how can we push back and continue to win? The reason why we're seeing all of this, thanks for dropping it in the chat, the John Lewis Act, which was merged with the For the People Act. They brought two big voting right bills together. It passed the House, but however, two senators blocked changing the rules that really allow this now omnibus bill to pass, is because Black people are gaining political power in leaps and bounds once again, building off of the convention from 50 years ago, building off the activism that has happened then and since then to push us into this next moment. So it's critically important that we have a new convention, but also that it connect from, Baba Mtume all the way to young people whose first time voting was in 2020, like my two girls. That was the first time they were old enough to vote in a general election. And so we have to connect all of that in order to move through this firewall, y'all. I mean, everybody out there listening, they are coming at us with everything they got to push back on our political power because we're winning.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I think that the Black folks at the 50th anniversary of National Black Political Convention 22 in Newark are coming together to forge a national Black political agenda in preparation for the 2022 midterm congressional elections and beyond. Right.
And the next general, because who's going to run again in 2024.
Oh, absolutely.
And he need to be running out of the country, but we got to deal with him in a couple of years again.
Mm-hmm. I think that we're focused on that, and being mindful as Black folk, and we get caught sleeping, right? And we can't afford that. And I think that one of the things that Brother Fatiyn laid out eloquently is that we have a limited amount of talk shows these days. So those of us who have an audience and those of us who have talk shows, we've got to be sounding that drum. And you all know that if Mtume was here, he would be doing that. But I want you all to know that Mtume is clearly working right from the ancestor realm, right? FI has given us the approval to do the memorial service at the 50th anniversary of the National Black Political Convention. So we are working on some outstanding and totally powerful Black folk from all over the country, as well as the diaspora, to come into the city of Newark. And Brother Akbar and I were talking about some of the people. I was hoping that FI would be on tonight to make an announcement, but he did tell me that when we talked on Wednesday, he said he has some good days and he has some bad days. And of course, none of us live in that house, and FI talks about sometime when he walks into his father's room, the spirit overtakes him. So I was hoping he would be here tonight to make the announcement. So I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna let him do it because he's given us the approval to do the memorial service And one of the things we talked about is that it's going to be the blackest memorial service has ever been done in the history of memorial services. Y'all can believe it.
Could I just say this real quick? One of the things, and I said this to Father the other day, it was just something that I just wanted to express to him. And, you know, Father's like his father, you know, we was getting ready to go on a conference call, and he apologized for not bringing the other person on for a moment, because he said, you know, Brother Fatiyn just effed me up. And I didn't plan on that. But let me just say this. We do a lot of things, and I'm touched to be part of this panel tonight, just knowing the work that you all do out there, and the work that I'm just in awe to be in your presence. But in the spirit of Africanism in Africa, and our brothers and our sisters, we talk about it, but a lot of people don't walk that walk. And when it comes down to parents, it talks about that we supposed to take care of our parents as they have taken care of us when we were infants.
Yeah.
And all I gotta say is, not because I know Fa, not because he's Mtume's son. And I said this to him. I said, brother, you're Mtume's son, but you became Mtume's friend. And brother, you was there every step. You did not let your father slip. You didn't let your father want for anything. And I'm talking about, I know the family's there collectively, but I'm just saying, I know what he did as a son to be there every step until Mtume had taken his last breath. And I just have to say that. He's not here tonight, but I just want to make sure that that is known, that Mtume was well taken care of, and Fa was there every step of the way. And, you know, it's not easy for a loved one, a child, to see their loved one go through health challenges, but he was there. So yes, if he has his good days and bad days, we understand that, because he's seen a lot that we didn't see that Brother Mtume had to struggle and go through in his transitional point. And you got to realize transition is not a day or two. So it's sometimes dealing with health and the health challenges that lead up to your last days here in the physical realm.
And I think that might be a good place to pause the conversation, because I know that we're going to be continuing it for a long time, right, in terms of the legacy. But I want to thank all of the guests that came on tonight. Like I learned, I love these panels because I learn a lot from everyone, right? Like, and I hope that the audience did as well. Ed, do you want to wrap it up and take us out?
Yeah, I want to echo, of course, what everything that Fatiyn just said as it relates to, just the, being on this, having everyone on the panel tonight, and of course, my brother Fa, and a lot of what you're talking about, Fa, John and I saw it up close and personal, because we spent a couple of days recording Mtume, getting his instructions for some of the things he wanted us to, put in place at the 50th anniversary at the National Black Political Convention. And so we saw Fa on his posts. And so, yeah, man, just incredible. And so, Brother Fatiyn, we appreciate you coming on the show. Monifa, of course, we appreciate you showing up for your crew tonight.
Always.
To the vote. And Brother Dr. Brown, we thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate that. And Fatiyn, the thing he did tell me from his sick bed, brother, of course, he put this together. I'm going to give him too many credit. He told me when John and I saw him, like 6 months ago, John, remember he said, I want you to work with Fatiyn. I didn't get around to it, but he got around to it, Brother Fatiyn. Right on. So now that the bridge is built, brother, we're gonna make that happen. We're gonna make that thing work. However he wants it to work, we're gonna let his spirit handle that. And thank you so much, my brother. Thank all of y'all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we definitely will have everyone back on here. We are getting ready to go into our next segment. I know we have Principal Capella was like, keep it going. But we have our next guest. Who is I read the bio, I've heard about Donna Williams, the wonderful Donna Williams, who knows everyone in New Jersey and is one of the best networking people I've ever met. Has introduced us to Linda Carter, an activist lawyer, was a professor at Essex County College, and has done a lot. She worked for Bill Bradley. She has been key in terms of voting rights, right? Like she was one of the people who helped put together the motor voter law in New Jersey. And when she went out to California, she did a lot with voter registration statewide to try to get more of us registered to vote. And she has a lot to say on this Martin Luther King weekend. I know Donna Williams wanted her to be on in Martin Luther King weekend because of her history and what she had done with voting rights and how important voting rights were. So what I want to do is, so we are honored to have you here today, Linda Carter, and for the work that you've done and for the perspective that you will share on this.
Now, before you get started with Ms. Carter, when you were on the other night, we were on that committee. I said you were going to be on. You said what?
Yeah,
what I'm going to be on? Right?
Yeah, I didn't know. So I got a call last night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had no idea. Okay. Hi, Fatiyn. How are you?
How are you, my queen?
Okay. So you guys can like fire your questions, whatever. I saw a list of, not a list. So I saw a note. I talked to Donna a little bit. And I think, Jonathan, you were on a call last night too, right?
Yeah, yes. You told me a little later. And it was fascinating. We were talking and I'm like, we need to get all of this actually on the air, right? So we're talking about voting, and we're talking about the voting rights bill that passed Congress, but that's not going to pass the Senate. And we just talked about voting and voting rights in the last segment as well. So, given can you give us some more of your background and your experience and widening the vote both in New Jersey and in California, and then let's bring that, like your experience, into the current situation. So tell us about your experience on the ground, because you've been an activist lawyer, you have years of experience helping on this particular issue. Can you give us some background?
Well, yeah, let me kind of do this. First of all, we're talking about the 1980s when I was working for Bill Bradley, and it was the 1980s in California, and it was a different time. Right? In terms, people still had some sense of civics since it had been removed from school, but it was still some time where people kind of, their attitudes about voting were different. I mean, it only took us, we registered all those people. And I remember when I did some voter registration, it would only take like a minute. You didn't have to really convince people to register. You just had to make sure that you did it quickly. That was the main thing. That was the 1980s. Things have changed sizably. When I did the motor voter, it was the late 80s when we did that. And people just had a different attitude, but a lot of, I think, has to do with the timing and what has happened since that time. Just to go back, I'm thinking, I don't consider myself an activist. I consider myself an active citizen. And if you read my bio, I've been paying attention since I was 12 during the Vietnam era. I protested Vietnam in 12 because young men who were coming back from Vietnam, who were 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, used to sit outside and just talk to me about what was going on. They talked about, and I do need to go back a little bit, many of the people who grew up, particularly where I grew up in Scudder Homes, were individuals who had, and were still continuing to migrate from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, not so much Georgia, Alabama, Virginia, up until the time I was in high school. These were people, some of them had been sharecroppers, some of them had fled from the Ku Klux Klan. So their attitudes about things were different, and the values and things that they had were different because it was a real, different time. Most of the businesses around in my neighborhood they may have been small businesses, but primarily Black-owned businesses. I think we never even went downtown. If we did, we only went downtown once in a while to go to Mulberry Street. And that was for the holidays. Otherwise, you go to Prince Street and you can get, you know, fresh fruits and vegetables. And you also had guys coming up from North Carolina and South Carolina bringing fresh vegetables, watermelons, and things like that.
Watermelon, that's
So,
right.
right, the times were different. And since that time, and I think when we're talking about this, we need to be very mindful. And wherever I go, I always make sure I tell people, you got to go back and realize that our community has been impacted by 50 years of heroin and about 45 years of crack cocaine. And so you got 2.5 generations. I understand in the city of Newark, I was just advised that 70% of our population in the city of Newark are 45 years old and younger. That means they have virtually no historical context unless they got it from religious organizations or family. But other than that, with the fact that the schools are not going to teach it, they don't have that kind of context. So we're looking at 2.5 generations of information that's not passed down. And couple that with the fact that most of their life, everything around them has been monetized. Everything has a price on it. And then you add the music, which has been weaponized and bastardized. You know, I'm not saying there's not good music. There is good music out there, but it's not necessarily played for a mass audience. You usually have to look for it. And even if you go on social media, you still have to look for it. So you're talking about a different time. Also, I need to go back a little bit because most people don't know when you talk about the civil rights era in particular, you have to look at what's happening in those segregated schools. In those schools, those teachers were teaching children in grammar school when they couldn't even be second-class citizens. They were learning civics.
And so what do you mean about the importance of learning civics? Hey, Donna.
Okay.
Hey.
There she is. All right.
When you are, civics teaches you how government's supposed to operate so that you understand. So you understand the language of government, you understand the language of politics, but particularly more government. You know, the structure of government, you know, the system. Those are the things you learn in civics. It's just basic how government runs. Unfortunately, you don't have, there's so many people out here who don't know how government's supposed to run. They don't even have an expectation for what's supposed to happen. And so when you talk about voting rights and things of that sort, it's not just voting. I mean, we have, and I just remember, we've had the right to vote. Black men have had the right to vote since the 1800s. Black women have had the right to vote since 1965. But voting is more than having a constitutional right to vote. It's about it's about showing up at the polls and voting, right? Those are the things we know about voting, but there are other important matters to consider. And one can act upon them while you're waiting in line, which we do a lot of, for checking your cell phone. Think about who you're voting for, right? Who or what is the entity or organization that's funding that person's election campaign? That's really important. And you can find this information out through, if you're in New York, the State Board of Elections, New Jersey Elections Law Enforcement Commission, Federal Elections Commission, OpenSecrets.org, mostly on a federal level. What about the candidate? Is the candidate knowledgeable about the issue? Is there consistency? Does the person have a track record of social justice or advocacy, or whatever you think it is that is important to you to have? Is it important that the person have some sense of spirituality? For some people, that's really important. Does the person have a willingness to surround themselves with competent, intelligent, principled, and committed people that represent the good that you want to see in your community? Is the person courageous and resilient, creative, and those things? So we talk about voting all the time, but we don't talk about it beyond having to go and vote. It's not, you know, and I appreciate people go to the polls. And well, let me go back. I appreciate the fact that they get registered to vote. I appreciate the fact that they go to the polls. But what happens is that we just go. We don't think about what we're doing anymore. We just go. And people say, get to the polls, get to the polls, get to the polls. But they never talk about the details of when you get there. So what happens is that, one, you don't have civics. So a lot of people who are not, like, you know, most of you who come on this program, you pay attention to what's going on. You're active citizens or you're activists, if that's what you want to be called, it doesn't matter. but you pay attention. And even if you didn't have civics, you pay attention because this interests you, right? This interests you. But for people who are just trying to make it, and not just in COVID, you know, when I grew up, we grew up in the projects where most people were working poor, but it wasn't an evil poverty. You didn't work 2 and 3 jobs so you can pay attention to what's going on. But things have changed. You no longer have the living wage. I call it an Uber society now. You get out of what you put in. So, you know, when we talk about voting, we have a right to do it. Some people don't exercise it because they're not interested because they don't want to be interested. They just don't know enough. And the other part is there's a language to it. You know, it's like if somebody's talking Farsi in front of you, you have no idea what they're talking about. So people might say, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't have anything to do with politics. We all know that politics impacts everything we do, from the water we drink to the lotion we put on our skin to whatever you do in your hair to your eyeglasses, your contact. The law impacts everything you do, and politics impacts everything you do. But people don't realize that, oh, I don't have anything to do with politics. I don't want anything to do with it because they don't understand.
And so, Sister Carter, how do we get, you know, because we had Congresswoman Coleman on last week, and she talked about how important this show is. How do we get our people to become more knowledgeable about politics? Because if you just said politics affects every area of our life, right down to the water we drink, how do we, you know, because I forget the brother who's the professor at Howard, he said that our problem really is in this country is that we have low information, and we really do have low political information. And because the world is about to go through a major shift, if we don't pay attention, and we said this to Congressman Payne, that if they lose the Congress in 2022, what they understand is that the Republicans don't ever plan on losing an election again. That is why they're doing all of that they're doing around the country. We're trying to reverse the vote, what they're doing in terms of putting Secretary of States in places. So the question is, how do we get our people to pay attention to politics more? How do we do that?
Well, and Professor Carter, you said it in the beginning, civics matter. And we had Superintendent León on in the beginning. So I would say one area that you can probably talk about is getting civics back into our curriculum so that we have a better understanding of what our expectation is of our elected officials.
She's been saying that, she's been sounding that drum for years too. Go ahead, Linda.
Yep. And what I would tell you is that, just to jump in, but what I would tell you is that the most important election, I know everybody looks at the federal election, but as you know, in the name of this program is all politics is local. The most important election that determines what books are going to be given to school. I mean, we have a school system where Mary Baraka's son is the mayor, and we don't have his books as part of the reading curriculum, as far as I know, unless something changed.
I'm sorry, Professor Carter. Can you say that one more time? Can you say that again? Say that again.
First of all, the school board is the most important election. That determines what books, who's going to get the contracts for our books, who's going to get public dollars for our books. We have the mayor whose father was a Mary Baraka, well known throughout the whole planet, right? But we don't have his books as part of the curriculum, like automatically included in curriculum. We shouldn't even have to ask for that to happen. So when you talk about the school board, keep in mind that it's important because it's public dollars. The people who are going to determine who's going to get the contracts, who's going to get the jobs to drive the trucks to deliver the toilet tissue, is determined by the school board for all the different schools. Who's going to get those $50,000 jobs, assuming that's the case, with benefits? That's determined at the school board level. What books? Who's going to get the paper contracts? What books? And again, it's about controlling the school board. And as you know, from this whole thing where everybody's against, not everybody, but a sizable population against critical race theory, right? These people we can learn a lot from them in terms of critical race theory. how they are strategically going about making sure that even though it has never had anything to do with K through 12, but their strategies. Now, mind you, a lot of their strategies they took from the civil rights movement, and they're using it on us. So civics is so important that it be in the school, and not a what is that? I can't think of it. Not libertarian version, but the old school. And you can actually go to the library and get an idea of what old school civics is that they no longer have in the school district. So it goes back to starting at the bottom, not the bottom, but starting with the most important to actually look, somebody sent me something and I'm sorry, through my chain of thought.
That's Kafele sounding the drum on his, sounding his drum, backing you up.
Okay. Right, it's the most important right there. So you control the school district. Well, let me go back. Whoever controls our children's minds controls our culture, our economy, and our community, right? And that's where it starts, right there at the school board. So if the people control the school board, they control the economics of the community, and they control the thought process of our children. And you know what's interesting for me when we talk about that is the fact, think about chattel slaves after they left chattel slavery. After they left, the most important thing was for them to make sure their children got an education.
First and foremost, that's right.
But they also knew not to trust people who did not respect them with their children's minds. So what they did is they identified somebody in their community. First of all, it had to be somebody that they could trust. And that was paramount. Can I trust you with my children's minds? Then if they trusted them, then they would put their little bit of money to send them to school to learn how to be a teacher to come back. And it had to be somebody who valued the community, somebody, again, they could trust with their children's minds. Somebody understood the challenges that that community was going to, because if they didn't understand the challenges, it wasn't going to work. They need to understand the challenge. So even chattel slaves, without this formal education that so many of us have, all these different degrees, but they knew you never let anybody else ever control your children's minds. So now, when we're talking about civics, and I know we're talking about civics and voting, but it comes down with Adam Clayton Powell said, what's in your hand? What did he say? What's in your hand? Right? That's all he did. What's in your hand? And look at what we have. We have a lot of things in our hand. Going back to Mr. Riley's point, we have a public library. I know everybody's into Google, but I can tell you right now, Google is profiting from you. And they're only going to give you the information they want. And they're going to give you what they want you to have at the top of the list. And not a lot of people are going to go down to the 12,000 and whatever and list of Google. They're not going to do it because people don't have a lot of time right now. So the reference librarians so desperately sitting there waiting for people to help them. Use the public library. Read everything. So if you go back to the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, they read everything. They were well versed in what.
That's right.
Know how to make elected officials accountable. Their job is to serve the population, not for the population to be herded by them. It's our job to tell them what we need. Now you have to get a consensus because they can't be responsive to everybody individually, but to get a consensus. But if you don't know what government, if you don't know about civics, if you don't know how government's supposed to work, the systems of government, then what happens is that the elected officials are controlling the people and the people are not getting what they should from them. I'm always saying, and I'm Mr. Riley, I'm going to go through this list really quickly, but I also tell people you should have a copy of the Declaration of Independence. How can you celebrate the 4th of July with a hot dog and a hamburger and you don't know what it says?
Black Panther Party uses the Declaration of Independence.
Exactly. Well, know it. I'm not saying it always applies on this. Know it. Know the Bill of Rights. You should have a copy of that with you. You can put an app on your phone for that. The Constitution. And I used to tell when I did work with guys coming out of prison or young men who had potential to engage in socially unacceptable behavior. I never used the word criminal, socially unacceptable behavior. I would always tell them to keep a copy of the Constitution in your car, a public library card, so that says to anybody who stops them, I know how to read, and the Declaration of Human Rights. Carry that with you. people generally, I say, get to know the history of Adam Clayton Powell. He was a model elected official. He was the only elected official I've known in my lifetime willing to die for his people. He's willing to die for his people. Write letters, learn how to write letters. You have a First Amendment right to write and complain, right? The First Amendment says that the people have a right to contact their elected officials or those people who are supposed to serve them and be able to complain. But that requires, and I found out that you can go online and find out, get a model letter for how to write. And I will tell you, writing letters is much more powerful than internet petitions. But internet petitions are fine, hard petitions are fine, emails are fine, form letters are fine, phone calls are fine. But the fact that you take time to write a letter to an elected official, that's civics. Knowing how to write a letter is very powerful. Voting every election. I've been voting since I was in the first class to vote as a result of the Vietnam War. The fact that people could go to war, but they couldn't vote. So, there was an amendment to the Constitution, and I was in that first class. When we registered to vote, it wasn't an activity. We actually had to go to the big room at the school. We had to go, and it was a whole activity. I mean, we walked across the stage to vote the way people do it to graduate from college. That's how we did. We walked in the auditorium. Part of registering was to walk across the stage to register to vote. And so I've never missed an election in a very long time, almost 50 years. Research the source. I always talk about knowing where elected officials' monies come from, so you know who has their ears and who you may have to neutralize. And I don't mean that in the FBI way. Be prepared to make a way out of no way. That's how the people who came before us, that's how they managed to lay a foundation for us. They were prepared to make a way out of no way.
Go ahead.
All the time. Watch movies. There's so many movies. Back in the day, they used to play movies to educate people. Now they don't necessarily do that. But there's a bunch of movies like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's a black and white, it's a 1953 film, but I can tell you everything in that film applies today. Mr. D's, I mean, these are old films, but if you want to learn about government and how it works, there's some films you can just look at. Music is at the heart of the Black flavor experience in the United States. Music, from the day we came off the shores, before we left, music has always been critical in our whole being. Especially, that's what Bob Law says. I always remember it was the essence of who we were, and that's why we couldn't congregate, but we could sing. We could use our voices. Our wounds may be owned, our hands may be owned, but our voices, we could still talk and communicate. Oh, the drums were taken away too. So many missing. Listen to the music. There's so much music out there, different music. As a matter of fact, if anybody wants a list, I put together a list of music that can do a lot of things. Just to give you a couple of titles really quickly, because I know my time is running out. Songs of History and Dignity. Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit. Nina Simone, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. Aretha Franklin, Lift Every Voice and Sing. As a matter of fact, I remember when I grew up, I've never heard anybody not having a family, but what was interesting, I thought about it, I said, if you didn't have a family when we grew up, and we never heard of that, the music could literally raise you. Aretha would talk about respect. James Brown would say, we ain't asking for nothing, just open up the door, give it to, we'll get it ourselves. Don't be a dropout. Curtis Mayfield. I mean, the music we can learn from about citizenship, because that music, a lot of the music was used, particularly during the civil rights movement, but it was also used throughout our history here. I have like songs of dignity, songs to encourage people to get an education. It's just so much. I'm just a little overwhelmed. I'm getting excited about this. And how we integrated our music. Joe Fatiyn talked about the prayers, and staple singers, touch a hand and make a friend. Curtis Mayfield.
Keep on pushing.
Sam Cooke, change is going.
Change gonna come.
Right. Temptations, Ball of Confusion. So the music can be used to educate people. As an example. Also, I also talk about media, and I'm gonna do this really quickly because I know the time is gone. I see Jonathan looking up at the clock. One thing I talk about is in my classes when I teach American government, I talk about the difference between media and press. The First Amendment doesn't say jack about media. It only says press. The reason why is because the role of the press was to educate people, let them know when the other branches of government were not acting on behalf of the American public. The role of the media is to sell you something. I have some other terms, but we'll leave it at that. The role of also the post office.
Wow.
People are sleeping on this. The role of the post office was to get the media, to get the press, get the information out to people. We didn't have Morse code. We didn't have any of these things, the social media. We didn't have any of that, but it was the post office. And, you know, one of the things a lot of people don't know, and maybe I can come back and talk about the United States Post Office, because all those buildings built in the 1930s, particularly like downtown Newark, are worth $1 billion a piece, and people are trying to get their hands on it. So when we talk about civics, it's not just in the classroom, it's also the music, it's also the movies, it's also understanding where you're getting your information from, right? What are the motivators? I tell my students all the time, I have a little thing I'll leave you with. I tell them, whoever's talking, you want to know who they work for, because that's going to tell you where their loyalty is. You want to know what the mission of the organization is. You want to know what the funding is for the organization. And you want to know there's some who, what, when, where, why, and how. That's for writing purposes. But at the end, I ask the question, what impact, if any, has this had on you as a consumer, a taxpayer, and a citizen? So when you're looking,
we're really going to have you back just to break down a lot of what you were talking about, right? Like even in terms of categories. But Donna, I know you have a big question to ask right now that'll extend it. So you can, I'm gonna give it to you. Donna, you can ask the question, Donna. I mean, there's 1 minute left. We are at 7:30, and Donna comes in with a big question. That's going to be deep. All right, Donna, ask.
Okay, so I have a twofold question. This is a hip hop and a political show. So the question that we ask all of our guests that come on, what hip hop artists are you listening to, or is one of your favorite hip hop artists? But also, can you just close out real simple by telling us, Congressman Payne Jr. always talks about the Republicans focus on three main things, but the Democrats have a bigger focus. Can you just speak to that a little bit real briefly? Because you spoke to that to John and I about that last night, why it's very different.
Okay, real quick.
And don't forget to tell us your hip hop are. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't remember the group. I think no, what side are we on? I forgot the name of the artist, and I think they're from Peru, as a matter of fact, if I remember. They're out in New York, but they're Peru, but the song is What Side Are You On? And I can't pull it up right now, but that's my favorite. The other part is going back to, what is it? They're from
Mortal Technique?
No, they're I know they're Spanish speaking, but they're from a Spanish speaking culture.
I know
you know I'm talking about. Somebody look it up real quickly so you can remind me.
I'm having a brain freeze. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, the other part, in answer to the question, the Republicans, everybody thinks this is Trump, right? And that's because of historical context. People have to look at the history. This is not something that just started with Trump. For the most part, the Republicans for over the last 15 years have been making moves around each state where they want to control the state legislators. So we're just recognizing this, but they've been working on this for like 15, 20 years. As a matter of fact, there's some materials that I have to tell you that it goes back to 1971, 1972. But as things change, they start accelerating. They're very strategic. They have a more homogeneous population where the Democrats have had, a group of people to deal with. They had, people of color, they have poor people, they have unions. And I have to say, as I said last night, the Democrats under Clinton turned into corporate Democrats. So they basically still want the same populations to support them, but they're getting monies from, in many instances, they're getting money from the same people that the Republicans are. So they're like fighting over who's going to get. That's right. Exactly. So we'll talk about that another time.
I have Jonathan Quali or Rebel Diaz. Rebel Diaz. Okay.
Rebel Diaz. That's it. Rebel Diaz. Yes.
Sister Latte is back in Chicago, but yeah, they were hot when they were together a few years ago, and they did some good community organizing too. Very fond of them.
Well, and also I kind of say Tupac, because Tupac was real heavy. That's why he had to go.
Most famous cover of the Black Panther Party. There you go. You talking my talk now.
Well, his mother did. Well, his mother did. She was what, pregnant with him when she was in court defending herself.
Defended herself in court. Afeni Shakur, the mother of Tupac Shakur, was brilliant.
Professor Carter,
Why
we're gonna have to
was
hold you to. Can we come get you back and have our civics moments every so often and see if we can do that? This is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, maybe what we could do is play snips of the films and the music. Maybe you could do a whole segment on the music that educated people and can continue to educate people.
Talk about Public Square. Josie been egging you on all through the show because you got a new endeavor that's important to appreciate on the media front from the community perspective, flipping the script on corporate mediaism. So we got to talk about some of that too.
Exactly.
DJ Rhino, did you hear Professor Carter said Rebel Diaz for Rhino? She said Rebel Diaz is who she's listening to.
Yep. I listen to certain things. I listen.
You muted, right?
Music motivates.
I gotta get up on Rebel Diaz. I'm not up on Rebel Diaz.
Really? Oh man, yeah. Rodrigo is still around, but it was three of them, but they were based in the Bronx. They did some organized. They had a space in the point at Hunts Point in the Bronx. In fact, they did their ceiling. Did a big ceiling mural on Mumia Abu Jamal. New York police went buck wild. You know, they've been in the trenches. You know, they hip hop in the community.
Yeah. I gotta look that up then, because that sounds like it's right up my alley. That's
Wait a minute, I can't believe you don't know it and I do. Now you know that's a problem.
She ain't gonna let you live that down.
Hey man,
Professor Carter,
guys, thank you for inviting me. I was tired, but Donna said, "Oh, you're so funny." I said, "Well, you know, I hadn't heard anything." And I said, well, I'll just go chill. And she said, no, you're not. You're coming on. So thank you. This is my first time. I had a good time. I'm glad you guys appreciate civics. If we all appreciate civics, my life would be no need for me to be here. I'm here for this mere purpose because you're right. I've been pushing this for a long time. If we don't know how government works, people want to take advantage of us. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for
Hi,
being
Jonathan.
on. We definitely
take care,
will.
guys.
We're going to have you on again. We're going to have you on probably plenty of times. So more than welcome.
No problem. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That was a great section.
Peace.
And I think when we're talking about civics and a civic education, I can't emphasize how much I agree with that, right? Like as in right now.
Teacher, man. That's right.
Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a public school teacher. And part of the big debate that's been going on in education for the last 20 years, like the education reform movement was focused on making people good workers, right? Like making people there was like corporate and education needed to go together because you needed to train people with 21st century job skills, right? But my whole thing has always been that education is about how to make better people citizens in a democracy, right? One of the most foundational things that you can do in a place where people are supposed to make decisions is they have to be educated in a certain way. If they're educated to be consumers, they're going to be consumers. That's actually dangerous to democracy. And I think we're seeing the results of that, where people, don't know how to critically read, don't know how to understand evidence, don't know how to weigh evidence. And those are the critical things that you need to have in a democracy that just don't exist in great deal now, right? Like the stuff that we're doing with debate. And now, I'm teaching certain courses like public speaking and debate for 7th and 8th graders. And what I'm realizing is it is exposing them to have conversations about evidence and how do they understand it and how they can have conversations about it that they're just not used to having, right? Like they don't know about warrants of arguments. It's just about like the statement, and it's like clickbait, and it's like clickbait. So that's one of those things that's that I think is really important in education. I think we have to put debate and debate skills in the things that we teach in debate, academic debate, and teach them a lot more broadly for the sake of democracy itself. I think that's going to be a big deal. But sorry for the rant. DJ Rhino, welcome, man. Welcome, man. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the program. And what's going on in hip hop, brother?
First off, I want to say happy birthday. Happy birthday to LL Cool J. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday also to Slick Rick, the legendary Slick Rick. Happy birthday to him. And then we have to say happy birthday to our own Newark, Brick City's Do It All Dupree Kelly of Lords of the
Dude's
Underground.
birthday today. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So
They
big up to
shared
Do It All.
birthday with the great Sundiata Okoli. I got to say that. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So happy born to all of the people out there that's sharing one today. Some news that's been going on that caught everybody off guard was a potential lawsuit that's about to begin with Pete Rock and Nas.
You're talking about
Yeah,
Pete
talk
Rock
about
and Nas?
Yeah.
Tell me what's
Yeah,
the
so
history of that? I don't know the history of that.
Talk
All
about
right, well, all right, so this is the deal. So Nas's debut album, his debut album Illmatic was produced by a bunch of legendary super producers in hip hop at that time, which was DJ Premier, Large Professor, Q-Tip, Pete Rock, and another brother named LES. They all came together to put together Nas's debut Outbreak album, Illmatic, which was huge. I mean, you got 5 mics. I mean, to this day, it's still considered a super, super phenomenal classic in hip hop of all time. There was a song on there called "The World Is Yours," and it was produced by Pete Rock of Pete Rock's CL Smooth fame from out of New Rochelle. So Mount Vernon. Pete Rock is basically saying that though he may, I believe he got like some advancement money and whatever at that time when they did the music. What he's saying though is that what was agreed upon in the contract was never carried out as far as his monies for that single, which was actually one of the bigger singles, the more successful singles that came off of that album was "The World Is Yours." And Pete Rock was the man behind that music. Now, what it is, in the contract, it's also specifies his vocal performance on the record, because he also says he's the one that's saying whose world is this. It has his vocal performance, it has his written pen in the song for that vocal performance, and he's saying that that's what he hasn't been paid for yet. And it's been like 30 years, just about 30 years for this to come out. Now, it's not like, that they have any kind of beef or anything, because they just recently did work together for Nas's Lost Tapes 2. So they're still cool. I think this is more of a business situation. Plus, there was other cases like this that took place where the plaintiff won. And so I think this is one of those things where, Pete Rock is trying to jump in on this. Like, look, man, there's money out there that's owed to me. I need to get that money. Especially with Nas being so hugely successful with his comeback with the King's Disease projects and his stake in Mass Appeal and all the things that Nas is doing right now. He's banking up right now, and maybe this is the time Pete Rock is saying, "Hey, look, mate, this is the time I need to, try to get my money." You know what I'm saying? Now that he's doing well.
It's kind of like he's Riley from the Boondocks from back in that show. He's like, "You got to pay what you owe." What you owe, right? But
yeah. But this caught a lot of people off guard, because you know how the media is when the way they play it. They just throw it out there with the headline, and it just looks like, oh snap, Pete Rock got beef with Nas and he's suing Nas, and so it just gives you this energy that it's a beef going on or something. And again, like I said, this is more of just a business situation where Pete Rock's trying to handle his business correctly and just trying to keep Nas on top of his. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that's what's going on with Pete Rock and Nas. Hopefully things work out in Pete Rock's favor, that he gets paid for his work, and that things move forward positively.
Yeah. So what else is going on, man?
All right, another thing that's been catching wildfire, and what's so crazy is that this thing originally took off, but somehow, I'm not sure how, but somehow it resurfaced. But Kool Moe Dee, the legendary pioneer, Kool Moe Dee, back in the 90s, put out a report card. He created his own hip hop report card, and so he has a list of MCs that we all know of from all parts of the country, all coasts, and he has, he had like a report card, A minus, A plus, B plus, B minus, C plus, C minus, all that kind of stuff, right? So he has this report card, and it's got everybody talking. Everybody's got their opinion on this. And what I've been saying is that it's an opinion. So we got all of these opinions on an opinion. You know what I mean? But on this list, some people are saying, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Some people are saying, I like myself personally, because there's so many names that are missing from this list. There's some names on this list I don't think should be on here right now, like Master P, Little Kim, Too Short, Mac 10, Puffy, because this and I'm only saying that because there's so many other artists that are not on this list that definitely need to be on this list before those. But they gave Jay-Z a B, DMX B plus, Master P C plus, Big Pun a B, Snoop B plus, Nas B, Corrupt B plus, Lauryn Hill A plus. The things that got some people heated is that they saw Mystical got an A and Jay-Z got a B. They see it's just crazy, man. I mean, it's crazy. They got it's so everybody's just talking about the grades on this list. But now Kool Moe Dee has it broken down in different categories. So he's grading people by vocabulary, articulation, creativity, originality, versatility, voice, hit records, stage presence, sticking to things, and innovating rhythms.
This would be great for the classroom.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Now, look. This is what I realized, and this is something I was saying in the thread when you and I were talking, John. Is that what I realized is that some people trump over other people because of their hit records. Like, for instance, I had made a point that they gave Biggie an A plus, they gave Black Thought a B plus.
wow.
Now, normally you wouldn't think that Biggie is going to be. Like, how do you look at Biggie as better, more lyrical, and just better than a Black Thought, right?
Right.
But then at the same time, when you think about the records category, you think about, all right, well, Biggie had way bigger records than the Roots had, right? And so that was kind of what got the grade over Black Thought for Biggie.
And if you're talking about the 90s, like when did the Roots come out? Like, weren't the Roots really
came out? The Roots came out in 93, 94, I believe. Yeah, and then somebody else was saying that same thing. Like, Lauryn Hill had just come out as a solo artist in '98. So she was huge at that time. But you got to see the list. I have it on my.
Well, we posted it. It's actually showing right now.
Okay, good.
The list is showing right now.
Okay, good.
Right? And one of
where can we find that at?
Oh, well, I just put someone posted on Facebook, right?
Yeah, and I have it on my page.
And I just put it there, and it was great. There were on my page, like, Shavar Jeffries chimed in, and it was funny. It was good. It was like how is Keith Murray
over Nas
above Nas, right?
Right.
And he's right. He's right? Like,
but what's the year of the card? But when was this card?
It's the late 90s,
99.
right? So,
99.
Well,
right, but I
99.
made the bad argument. I did make a bad argument about that. I was like, maybe Ether was released in 2001, right? And I think after Ether was released, like, Nas was already legend, but after Ether was released and he bodied Jay-Z like that, then I think after that, everybody was like, Nas, like one of the greatest of all time. But, he actually should have been considered that before Stillmatic. because his earlier stuff was incredible as well, right? So yeah, Keith
most
Murray,
definitely.
the most beautifulest thing in the world. It's great.
Yeah. And the only thing,
Yeah, and Keith Murray's music was rocking back then.
yeah, and see, my thing is the only thing I can see Keith Murray may have had over Nas, because Nas was definitely more lyrical. He was more of a visionary with his rhymes. But only thing I could say that Keith Murray had over Nas was probably energy, just physical energy. He was very animated. You know, Nas wasn't that much of an animated guy. Keith Murray was very animated and just kind of like all over the place when he performed. So that's the only thing.
89 over Nas.
Nah, that's what I'm saying. So and so basically what I was just saying again, Kumo D is one man. I love Kumo D. He's one of our pioneer legends of all time. He was Rakim before Rakim as far as wordplay. He was the speed rapper before any of these speed rappers out here. Kumo D was that guy. So I'm always going to give him that top-notch love and respect. But he is a man with an opinion, and this report card is the opinion of one man, Kumo D. So I don't think anybody should take it too serious. I mean, like some people were going crazy over this report card.
Oh, but it was fun though. It's
a conversation piece. Right?
Yeah, but we got to keep it light though.
Right. And it was great looking at
there'll be new beats coming up out of this.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So but it ended up resurfacing and everybody's talking about it again. So kudos to Kumo D.
And I appreciate it. One of my other friends who's significantly younger, right? Like a young lawyer, just sent a message. She was like, "Who's Kumo D?" I was like, "Dad."
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
I was like, "Yo, we owe."
That's young.
Yeah, that's real young. Who's Kumo D?
And I realized that most people probably don't even know that that LL Mama Say Knock You Out, that beef, right? Like probably most people don't even know about that now. But that was such a great LL comeback. That was my favorite LL song, actually.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I'm wearing LL. It's his birthday, and we're talking about Mo D. But yeah, it's true though, man. Yeah, LL had a few comebacks. He was coming on Kumo D, Ice-T.
Okay, so DJ Rhino. For the first time, I gotta correct you. Right? You said LL had a series of comebacks, and you know what I'm gonna say to you? Don't call it a comeback. Okay, couldn't help it. It's one of my favorite songs. Right?
Yeah, that's definitely one of mine too. Yeah. Yep. But that's it, man, for hip hop. I mean, there's some other
Rhino, we got to talk about the Mac leaving. The Mac, they said he influenced the Mac pass and how he influenced all hip hop artists across the gentleman that played the Mac. I'm sorry.
Oh, Max Julian. Yeah, rest in peace, Max Julian.
Yes,
played the Mac. Yeah, any of the rappers that was in, big on the whole pimp thing. You know what I mean? That's what that was about. Pimping ain't easy and all that kind of stuff. That stuff Big Daddy Kane was talking that, it came from stuff like the Mac.
Now, actually, DJ Rhino, there is one more thing that I definitely want you to talk about. And tomorrow on your set, you are dedicating it all to Mtume, James Mtume. We just had a segment on our show dedicated to James Mtume. We're going to be doing a lot. Like, as you all know, he was very influential on this show, right?
Definitely.
As in on the creation of the show, the continuation of the show. Like, James Mtume was very much a mentor, to the program, and would come on the program, would give it his time. Had one of the most fun times I ever had on the show. The fun times I had in the show was when James Mtume, myself, and Bashir were talking about the Republican primary in 2015. It was September of 2015. They just had their first debate, and me and Mtume were like, Trump's going to win the Republican nomination. I was like, he might win the presidency, but he's definitely going to win the Republican nomination because he was just trashing people, saying wild stuff and becoming more popular with it. And Bashir was like, nah, white people aren't going to vote for Trump. They'll see through that. And we were like, nah. James Mtume was clear. He was like, no, like Trump is white people, right? They will love him. And oof. Yeah.
And look what happened, man.
Right. But
Look
talk
what
about Mtume's influence on music and hip hop, because we talked about a lot of his activism, and the entire show was dedicated really to Mtume as activist, right?
Right.
Talk about his musicianship and his influence on hip hop.
Juicy.
Well, definitely, you know, of course, we know, you know, Diddy had an idea of using Mtume's song "Juicy Fruit" for Biggie's first single. At the time, Biggie was totally against it. Biggie was coming out of Brooklyn. Brooklyn was about hard body kind of music and beats and rhymes and stuff. And here comes Diddy telling him that he should use this R&B slow jam, basically. I mean, because that's how, you know, if you ever listen to the stories of Mtume talk about Juicy Fruit when they put that out, you know, the record companies and the radio stations, they didn't want to play that during the day. They didn't think it was an up-tempo song. Plus, it was kind of risque what they were talking about. So it was played in the evening time. So Juicy Fruit was a song that was considered like a ballad almost. You know what I'm saying? It was played at night after a certain time at night. Now, so that was like a ballad. So when Diddy brought it to Biggie, Biggie was not feeling it at first because he was like, well, this is like some slow R&B, you know, stuff, right? And but you know, Diddy convinced him, you know, we needed that radio hit, that crossover radio hit,
and
man,
the rest is some serious history.
It took
Oh
off.
my goodness.
It took off.
Big time.
Yeah, it took off. Seriously.
And it's funny, the way that you were describing
and then, you know, there was other people. Say that again.
The way that you were describing
say,
it
John?
as like this, the way that you were describing it as a, you know, as a slow love song in terms of Juicy, and then you had the LL Cool J shirt on, and I can imagine Biggie was like, I ain't LL, right?
Right.
You got me doing love songs.
Right.
Got me beating the ladies, but no.
Yeah, and so this is the thing, like it's about taking chances, right? You know, Jay-Z talks about when he took a chance on the Mark 45 beat for Hard Knock Life using Annie. Like he said that was a huge jump out the window. That ended up being one of his biggest hits.
That's
and his
right.
biggest tour. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So and it's the same thing with Biggie. Same thing with LL. LL was willing to take that chance. You know, and honestly, LL was doing it when he first came out because he had a song called I Want You, and then he had a song called I Can Give You More, and then he took it to that next level when he did I Need Love, which took him over the top with that. So, yeah, Biggie, he took that chance, and you see what happened. When you take these chances, man, that single took off. It took off, and then he did other things like it, because then he, you know, they sampled DeBarge Stay With Me for one more chance, you know. So that became like a formula after the success of Biggie's Juicy.
And a lot of Mtume songs ended up getting sampled, and so many that
they sampled COD, I'll Deliver. They sampled You Are My Sunshine. Recently, maybe a couple of years ago, Common and Marsha Ambrosius, they sampled You, Me, and He by Mtume. You know, then there were also samples during the conscious era of hip hop, like during the Jungle Brothers and stuff, where people were sampling stuff from the Alkebulan album. We're talking.
Oh man, that was a great album.
Mtume.
My niece's father did the album cover. Wabembe.
Wow, I didn't know that because I love that album cover, bro. I didn't know that. See, yeah, and that album cover is, I love it. That whole album.
Repeat that again. Which album cover is this?
It's called the name of the album is Alkebulan, Land of the Blacks, and it's that's
one of the original names of
Emoja Ensemble. Yeah, and
those are the days of the East,
right?
The Black Arts Movement, right? The Black Power Movement, Brooklyn, East. You know, X-Clan wasn't talking about just going in the East direction. The East was a venue of the Black Liberation. That was the Black Power base in Brooklyn, where all these artists came together and performed. Mtume, that's where Mtume's, you know, musicianship really began to gel, and shortly after that, he got on with Miles Davis.
Right. So what I'm going to be doing tomorrow on my on the Shake Up tomorrow on Twitch is going to be all Mtume.
That's
I'm
gonna
going to
be
be
hot.
playing stuff from the early days of when he was playing with Miles. I'm going to be playing stuff from the Alkebulan album, Kawaida. I'm playing stuff that he did. Basically, we're going to be listening to jazz, soul, funk, dance, R&B, and hip hop. One thing that I've not heard anyone speak on yet in any interview, and I haven't even heard James Mtume bring this up himself, but James Mtume also he produced and wrote and played for a rap group called Freeze Factor from right out here in Jersey. Right out here in Jersey. It was a rap duo called Freeze Factor. They put out an album called Chill back in 1989. James Mtume was all behind that. That was his work, but nobody ever really talks about that stuff. Big ups to my man Malik Mania, because Malik Mania was the one that put me up on it back then when it was going on. But so that's going to be
the influence actually runs pretty deep.
Yeah, and then he wrote stuff for Roberta Flack, Donny Hathaway, Phyllis Hyman, Stephanie Mills, Teddy Pendergrass. He's written and composed for so many people. He was the man behind the theme for New York Undercover.
Absolutely.
So so Mtume has had a lot of work, man. He's had an extensive career, and he was one like Herbie Hancock and others, man, who was not afraid to push the envelope when it came down to technology. I remember the interview with him and Stanley Crouch going back and forth talking about Miles Davis. Stanley Crouch was trying to say that Miles Davis was a sellout and this, that, and the other, costumes he was wearing and technology. And Mtume broke all of that down. He broke all of that down because, we can
say some other things about Stanley Crouch.
Yeah. I'm gonna be polite tonight. Mtume, man. Toombs, man. Toombs was no joke, man. But he knew how to keep the fire. He knew how to keep the fire, controlled though. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, he went in on the brother though. He went in on him. You know what I'm saying? But he was a huge advocate of moving forward. He was a huge advocate of moving forward. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody said earlier, he'll build the bridge and he'll burn the old one. You know what I'm saying? Because he doesn't want to look back. And that was
actually that was a Miles Davis statement too. Miles Davis said,
"Got it from Miles.
Never want to repeat the same thing. I never want to go backwards." People were always asking him to do music from the 60s. And I was like, I don't do that. I've done that. Right. So it was like the Miles versus Witten. So when I heard that, I'm like, yo, man, that's some real influence because he played, because of the way that he played with Miles Davis in an era where they were doing some new stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you ever get a chance, look up on YouTube and look for Miles Davis in Tokyo. I believe it was 1973. That was a incredible performance, man. That whole performance, that concert was crazy.
Miles Davis,
real quick, because I know we are running out of time.
We are running out of time, but yeah,
I have to share this though. Is that my greatest moment when Mtume was coming to the studio when we were still in the studio at Rutgers in the Robeson building was to have Mtume talking to y'all talking politics and activism, and there was just times where I would just disrupt the whole conversation because in his ear I'm playing something from when he was playing with Miles or something from Alkebulan or something from his early days in his career, and he would just freeze in the middle of his conversation and just slowly look at me stuck and just point his finger and be like, that's the one, that's such, and then he would break down which what it was that I was playing and when he did it and all of that. But I remember doing that to him like 2-3 times.
He appreciated that you did your homework, you knew your stuff, and you were clear what he was brought to the table to try to talk to young heads. Right on.
Right. And when Common and Marsha Ambrosius put their stuff out there, used You, Me, and He, I reached out to him, let him know, yeah, you still out there, man. They still picking your stuff, So big ups to Mtume, man. He lives forever in me, man. He's gonna live forever in me, man.
Right. No, I agree. All right. So
again, check me out tomorrow, twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ, 3 p.m.
What time? 3 p.m. Right on.
Yeah.
All right. No, that's excellent, man. and we'll try to listen in because I definitely want to hear that. So
Good.
thank you. We've had another week. Is there anything else you want to, Donna?
This is Dr. King's weekend. We got to get some
Yeah.
announcements in real quick.
Right,
Go
Donna?
ahead, Zaid. Go. Let me
We-
just say this is a week of no protest for the King family. If that bill, no protest, no celebration. I'm sorry. Do
All
not
right.
celebrate. You're right. Thanks for the face, Saeed. No celebrating it. If that voting bill was not passed, the King family was firm, and they said there is no celebration to be had. We need to be out in those streets protesting. So I think we need to take our cue from the King family and act accordingly, and to stay. And as Professor Carter said, we need to get involved, get engaged, and know what the issues are and know what's going on. And pay attention on Monday. There's supposed to be a vote on Monday, and Schumer's calling them to task. Don't be out here quoting Dr. King, but you can't act accordingly.
Right.
So let's get engaged, people.
Very
And
quickly,
also, I'm sorry, we'll talk about Kanye next week, about his lawsuit, Rhino.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, but
very quickly, I mentioned Sundiata Kohli. Go to the new webpage, Bring Sundiata Home Alliance. We have a hot petition that's important for him that we're trying to get at to 20,000, right? Jersey's going to be very important in trying to build out that campaign for him. Dr. King tomorrow, we're on the streets, 12 o'clock. Just bundle up. It's supposed to be cold. It's winter in America, so put your damn coat on, right? Monday, City Hall steps. Frontiers International in Plainfield. They do that. This is their 46th annual Dr. King piece at 10 noon. Check it out on Facebook. One of my teachers, my Baba Lau, is hosting a Pan-African forum honoring Dr. King and Amilcar Cabral. It's 24th year, 11 o'clock out of UMass Boston. This weekend belongs to Dr. King. We got to fight to take our voting rights back, and we need not to compromise or apologize or explain that to anybody. We are at the crossroads in America. The only way to go is forward.
All right. So thank you. It's another weekend, and All Politics Are Local. Thank all our guests, the Superintendent of Schools, Roger León. Thank all of the guests who came to give tribute to Mumia, and that was a great section, and also to Linda Carter. So thank you, and until next week, stay safe, stay careful, and go out and do something on Monday. All right, protest.
And don't stop.
Right. Take care.